State. We that is a reminder to all of us on the committee that we are live streaming. So let's be careful with our sidebar conversations, and we don't want frustrations to boil over with a hot mic. Okay, so we do have a code of conduct that I'll remind everybody as we go back to work this fall. It's been a great summer. Time to go back to work. Time to remind ourselves that we have some decorum that we expect in our committee meetings. We go through the chair and we respect each other, and we do that because it helps us to get the work done. You can tell from the agenda committee that we've got a very, very jam-packed agenda for the next 2 days, and we're going to try our best to adhere to those hard deadlines that we've set for ourselves. At noon tomorrow, we'll be done with our transportation issues. We're going to stick to the roads for the first day and a half, and then we're going to go to our military work tomorrow afternoon. And I know the chairman tomorrow will get us out of here in good shape because lots of things going on these last 2 weeks of August. Hey, before we get started officially, I do want to say hi to Representative Clark Stitt. Good to see you, Representative. Thanks for coming by this morning. The nominee from one of the parties for state senator is here, Stacy Jones. If you'd meet Stacy, she won the primary over here, and we're excited about that. And congratulations to you, Stacy. Representative Baker. Where's Representative Baker? There he is, right there. Thanks for the donuts. By golly, that's important. Heather, would you take roll, please?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning.
Senator Anderson.
Here.
Senator Furphy.
Here.
Senator McEwen.
Excused.
Senator Pappas.
Here.
Representative Baker.
Here.
Representative Burt.
Here.
Representative Henderson.
Here.
Representative McGuire.
Excused.
Representative Obermueller.
Here.
Representative Hearn.
Oh, here.
Representative Romero Martinez.
Absent.
Representative Stivar.
Present.
Chairman Landon.
Here.
Co-chairman Burkhart.
Here. Mr. Co-Chairman, before we get started, any comments you'd like to make this morning as we get underway?
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chairman. Just a couple things. I apologize for my computer. Most of you know I usually don't have a computer up when we're in committee. However, we got so many emails yesterday afternoon and evening about this meeting. I haven't had time to even look at some of them. So that's why I wanted to apologize for that, which leads me into my next one, which is for all those listening, if you want to make comments and send them in, please do it in a timely fashion. The night before is probably not to your benefit because frankly, I didn't get a chance to look at some of the comments. Just be blunt about it. We have a lot of work to do. We have a short time to do it in, and we need to stick to the schedule and stay on track, on target. And again, thanks to Representative. It's been a long 3 weeks. Representative Baker for the donuts and for setting up today's tour. You did a lot of work on that. We surely appreciate it. So with that, Mr. Chairman, hit it.
Thank you. It is appropriate to thank the baker for the donuts. Really. So we're going to go to the director of the State Department of Transportation, Director Reiner. Welcome. Thanks for being here. We've got lots of issues to discuss. So take it away this morning.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, Luke Reiner, Director of YDOT. With me is Shanna Ratliff, who is our interim administrator of the Wyoming Highway Patrol. And sort of in keeping with what we're discussing here, certainly we'll just give a couple opening remarks about really the state of your Department of Transportation. And I'll just tell you right now that it's good. We're working through some issues and obviously we'll talk about those as we go and some real success stories as well. But just in terms of opening comments, it is the season of orange cones. Hopefully you all drove through some on the way out here, but I tell you, it's been a good construction season for us. The weather's been good and our contractors are hitting on all cylinders. Like us, they struggle with employees, but right now, our projects are continuing and are going well. So we're happy with that. I do have some pictures to show you. If you slip to, we're projected in the back. So, but y'all have handouts. I'll just refer to just you may not be able to see that. So let me just talk slide one. There's some pictures of a snowplow and some snow. So that was Chief Joe Highway over Memorial Day this year. Now you remember it sort of warmed up. Lots of people went to the mountains, and then there's 2 to 3 foot of snow up on that mountain, and the campers and cars and trucks and lots of people stuck. And my thanks to the members of District 5 who really spent all weekend up there plowing snow and getting people pulled out. And a really nice response on that. Now, talking about snowplow drivers, we are still short. And so if you know of anybody who would like to be a snowplow driver, we are hiring part-time or full-time. And that's true, at the same for troopers and our dispatch and really across the board. We won't spend any really more time than this, I think, talking that specifically this weekend, but our biggest, my biggest concern on a day-to-day basis continues to be the number of men and women that are manning, our positions and are ready to respond as required. We are in really the world of snow, making alternate plans for, hey, how do we make sure we cover down on storms this coming year? Because we have some sites across the state where we'll have to shift people if there's a big storm there based on current manning. Again, thank you for the pay raise. It's helped, but our ability to recruit, we're still working through. And that there's shortages across this nation. So that remains to be our biggest issue.
Director, we've got a question real quickly.
You bet.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator, go ahead.
Luke, do you contract any of that snow plowing? Do you utilize any of the local contractors in those particular areas that you have trouble with?
Yeah, but Mr. Chairman, Senator Anderson, there have been a couple times in the past where we have, they don't have snowplows. So then it becomes an issue putting them in our truck, or they use different equipment. Sometimes when they use different equipment, there's lots of delineators get knocked over. And so it hasn't been a great mix in the past. We are taking a look at whether we should do that this year. We're also looking internally for volunteers and anybody who might want to, get out of the office and maybe get behind the wheel of a plow. Then obviously we got to make sure they're CDL trained and trained in that piece of equipment to make sure there's success. But that is, as we start looking forward to, the first snow will be here in September. We'll just making sure that we're manned correctly. So that's item number one. If you go to slide number 2, some nice pictures of Yellowstone. So obviously we had some big floods up there. My hat's off again to District 5 engineers and employees who really worked for about 3 days around the clock to save some bridge infrastructure for us right east of Yellowstone, up St. Joe, Chief Joe, and then on Highway 212 that comes out of the park. And there's a couple bridges there on Chief Joe where the water just was right up to the bottom and lots of debris on the upstream side. And so really a couple nights I had an excavator that we rented, put our best operator on there, and they were continually pulling all the debris from the upstream side of the bridge and putting it on the bank to try and keep the pressure off. They were also ready to drill the deck, if needed. The reason you drill a deck is if the water gets up to the girder, there gets to be an air pocket and it'll actually float that bridge deck off, because it's not screwed down, it's just held on by weight. And so, but
Director,
thankfully we didn't have to
the
do that.
co-chairman has a quick question.
Quick question. So, Director, how much of the damage we've all seen on TV and that and the videos falls to you, to the Department of Transportation to take care of?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, actually, there is a bit, probably about 7 projects. We have about 5 sites between Chief Joe, which goes up, north of Cody, and then what we call Highway 14, 16, 20, which is the one that goes from Cody into the east entrance of Yellowstone. Right now, about 3 of those we're under emergency contract using federal emergency relief funds to repair. A couple of the others, we can wait a little bit, so we'll put those out to bid. And again, we should be able to use the emergency relief fund, but basically because there's not an emergency, we'll walk through the standard bidding process on those. We did not get beat up as bad as internally on Yellowstone. I did go walk some of that ground with the superintendent of Yellowstone, really looking at, and I've got a little, I was going to talk it right now. So one of the issues I think everybody's familiar with Cook City, which is right on the northeast entrance to Yellowstone. They typically, the park plows into Cook City from the west. And so if you live in Cook City and you want wheeled access, your wheeled access is through the park into Gardner and into Livingston. That road is still not passable. There is Oftedal is actually up there right now working really hard to get it open and promised to have it open until the 5th. Have really earmarked and looked at having it open by the 15th of October. So our intent right now is that if the state of Montana asks us, and we're standing by for the emergency management assistant compact request, we'll take care of making sure there's wheeled access into that community from the east, from the Wyoming side. But that would mean we'd plow about 5 miles into Montana just to make sure that propane, gas, groceries can get into the town, and if there's a medical emergency, they can get out. But after that, then the intent would be that Yellowstone would again plow that road from the west, and they'd go back into Gardner and Livingston.
Mr. Chairman, so Director, just to clarify that compact, if something happened on this side of the border where we needed the help of Montana, they would then also reciprocate and provide that assistance. Am I correct?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, that's how the EMAX work, is all states have signed that. And basically it really gives us the legal protection to go back and forth, do our jobs, and really protected on the insurance and liability side. But really a phenomenal response by both the Montana DOT and Wyoming DOT. Our District 5 also did emergency repairs on a bridge in Wyoming to keep wheeled access into Cook City.
Director, I hope you'll pass along to District 5 and all the guys that worked hard up there to our appreciation from the committee. That's really the way it ought to work, and really proud of our guys. On all the work.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll pass that on. I did about 3 weeks ago run that road with the director of Montana. We started in Red Lodge, ran up over the Beartooth, and then ran into Cook City, looked at all the repairs with our leaders from both sides. And it was a delightful trip. And it was nice to put eyes on phenomenal work. Moving on then to slide number 3 is a picture of the Snake River Bridge project that we intend to let. I think we're going to let it now in November. And that will be a new bridge over the Snake River on Highway 22 right west of Jackson. And it replaces that bridge, and then it also works on the intersection of 22 and 390, and 390 is the road that goes up to Teton Village. So lots of traffic on that corridor. I just share with you that bridge was recognized by AASHTO for an award of the Environmental Stewardship and Partnership Award. And that was really based just on the planning so far, but it accommodates a wildlife underpass and 3 additional wildlife crossings associated with that, and phenomenal partners in terms of Game and Fish, Teton County, and other community organizations. And so it was nice to recognize that team out there, District 3 in Teton County, for really doing, again, some really nice
Senator
work.
Pappas has a quick question.
So the bridge was completely reconstructed. Was it because of capacity or was it because of condition?
So,
Director?
Chairman and Senator Pappas. So actually, it's the planning stage. We'll let it this fall and it will be reconstructed. So, but it has to be, if you remember, we load rated a bridge 2 years ago because we had a critical fracture failure, and it was this bridge. So this one has to be replaced, but we will take it from 2 lanes to 4. Knowing that Highway 22 is our busiest 2-lane road in the state. It has the highest average daily traffic of any 2-lane out there. And if you ever driven it during the day, it's congested. I mean, when somebody says we don't have congestion in Wyoming, generally it's true, but it's not true on that road. It's just packed. It's
Thanks
bumper to
for
bumper.
anticipating my question, Director, which was, are we anticipating that traffic load up there? And I really appreciate the fact that we are. Go ahead, Senator. Pappas. Oh, I'm sorry,
Mr.
Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, the wildlife crossing project, how does that fit in with the bridge? What, is it an underpass or it's not an overpass surely, but
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Senator Anderson, the wildlife crossing is actually not across the river, but they're across and underneath the road on the west side of the river. And so when you start looking at it, it's a large moose habitat, and trying to figure out where the moose went across the road has been a challenge, and getting the right type of fence. But the design is good, and lots of people were involved in that, and I think that's part of what led to the award.
Mr. Co-Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director, you indicated the bridge was going to go to 4 lanes. Is it anticipated that Highway 22 will also eventually be a 4-lane highway?
Mr. Chairman and Mr. Co-Chairman. So the lots of planning going on now on that corridor. And we will, in fact, officially kick off the planning phase for Highway 22 expansion reconstruction this fall. And we'll start that NEPA process, and it'll take probably 3 years because of all the stakeholders that are involved there. But it would be premature for us to say 4 lanes, could be 3 lanes, could be 5 lanes, could be something else. But we know something has to change because there's too much traffic.
So Director, when you're talking about that road, are you talking all the way out to the village? Or is it just that stretch of highway that goes over to Wilson? What parts of the roads are we talking about over
Yeah,
there?
Mr. Chairman, that would be really we'll take care of, the Snake River and out to, it'll be 4 lanes from the river out to the
Wilson?
out to this initial project here is just out to the exchange for 390 to go to the village. But for the planning purposes for 22, it's out to Wilson and just a bit beyond.
So from
Yeah.
the town of Jackson.
From the town of
over to
Jackson
Wilson.
to Wilson. So
Okay.
that basically about 5 miles.
Lots of folks you have to work with on that one, isn't it?
Mr. Chairman, there's many stakeholders.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah, moving on
Please
then
continue.
to slide number 4. I just report to you on Dry Piney project. So as you recall, that was a really delightful project with money raised by constituents that said, hey, listen, we're really interested in getting a wildlife crossing. So we took that money that was raised by constituents and added it to a $14 million build grant, and it's under construction as we speak. The underpasses, there's actually 9 going in. I think they'll have 6 done this year. The next 3 will be done next year. And you can see a picture of one. It's the biggest one of all. That trying to get the antelope to go underneath. Antelope typically like to go over. This is primarily a deer migration route, so most of the crossings geared to deer. The fence is a little bit slow and delays on that. So I know we're working through those issues on the ground, but I report to you that that project is coming along and it's nice to see. If you look at slide 5, there is the bridge in Casper, which I believe you have observed. And that one is really, again, the contractors are ahead of time, are ahead of budget, are under budget and ahead on timeline. So doing a nice job.
So Director, I had a question on that one. That being in my district, are we going to retain the off-ramp to Walsh Drive on that? Or will we go back to the original design? And I didn't have the answer to that.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, my understanding is that, no, that exit is a temporary detour and the roads will actually go back to how they were. So
I
we'll
saw that.
actually, part of that construction project, will pull all that dirt that was laid down for this 2 years and it will go back to the way it was.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Co-Chairman, did you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Director, that kind of covers a lot of the highway work going on. What's the status of the new interchange here in Rock Springs? Just quickly,
Yeah.
it's not on your
You
list,
you
so
bet.
I catch you
Mr.
off
Chairman
guard,
and
I
Mr.
apologize.
Co-Chairman, rolling along, we should be buttoned up this year. So it's coming along nicely.
Okay.
Moving on then to the next slide, slide number 6. I'll just let me hit a couple of these things briefly. So we've talked about the IJA or the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act in the past. I'll just share with you that the money's been nice. It's an extra about, on roads and bridges, about 60 million. It has gone a long way to covering the 21% increase in inflationary increase in costs. Really has allowed us to execute the STIP as planned and add a couple new projects. So that has been, the money's been well spent. If you remember, there's about $45 million a year on bridges. So it's called the BFP or the Bridge Formula Program. And that one again is progressing nicely. That's the one I think I briefed you on last time. About 15% of that money needs to go to locals. About 30% ended up, we sent to the locals. We think that's fine. Our focus was, what's the worst bridges in Wyoming and what do we need to fix first for all of us? And that was our approach. Most of the counties have now agreed on what bridges we're going to fix. There's a couple that wanted to modify them and we've worked through that. So we're in a good place there. And now we're really working through, hey, how are we going to administer, trying to take care of? It's about 40 bridges we're going to do. And we aren't staffed. So we're going to put that out for bid and we're going to hire a contractor to help us manage that money and manage those programs. Just because we just don't have.
I think I
enough there.
speak for the committee, Director, that we're very anxious to get these bridges done. So
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, those are just state and federal bridges, right? No, you're not talking about any county bridges.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Senator, that's a negative. That is, so part of when we say this has to go to locals, we are over 30% of this will go to municipalities and county bridges. And so it's a good deal for all of us. And so we really, that's the approach that we took is, hey, let's focus on the worst bridges, no matter whose system they're on. And so that's how we tackled it. And I think we'll all enjoy the results. Yeah.
So that bridge evaluation, real quickly, Director, that carried all the way down to the county and municipal level. So you've got a list of all the bridges in Wyoming and you know which ones.
Mr. Chairman, you're exactly correct. In fact, the trivia there would be that even though there's a bridge that's on a county system or in a municipality, WYDOT is responsible to do the inspections on those bridges.
That's right.
And so our engineers do that. And so we do have a comprehensive list of all bridges in the state. And so really it was as we look through our data, it was our recommendation to the county commissioners that said, hey, we think you should fix bridge X, Y, or Z. Do you concur? Most of them concurred. Some said, we'd sort of like to do something else. And if it made sense, we went with it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. I think the other thing I'd share with you on IDGE is we are working very closely with the governor's office with Rob Krieger, who is the sort of the IDGE czar per se. We have basically monthly meetings with him. The focus there again is to make sure that there's no rock left unturned for municipalities, for counties, and for state entities in terms of availing ourselves of all available money in IDGE. Because it's there, lots of it is grants, and we just got to be astute and careful to say, hey, here's an opportunity. Do we want to avail ourselves of it? All of those grants, not all, most take a match. And so the constant discussion is, where do the match dollars come from? As we've discussed with this group before, not a lot of money at YDOT for discretionary grants. In fact, we have a moratorium on them. And so part of the discussion then becomes, hey, where's the match going to come from? So working through that.
Director, do you have enough personnel, man and woman power on the front end to get the work done to access these grants?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, the short answer is no. We've dedicated one person, and that's her job to make sure that she's tracking all the grants. But we've stood up a very robust website. And as we've coordinated with the County Commissioners Association and WAM, the municipalities, the message has been, if you got questions, call us. Here's the website. We've hung a bunch of stuff there, how to apply for a grant. But you're going to have to, we all got to be in the boat on the oars together on this one, because YDOT doesn't have the manpower to work all these grants, specifically if they're going to the counties and our municipalities.
Director, I want to come back to that, but Senator Anderson had a question.
Mr. Chairman, are those 10% matches or are they worse than that?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Senator, most are 10%, some are 20. It varies, yeah.
So Director, as we move on through the interim and into our November meeting, would you be willing to take a look at that? I guess I'm feeling like maybe it's worth going forward with any kind of request we need to make to an appropriations process. If we feel like we've got to have somebody dedicated only to this effort, I'm not sure what the deadlines are. And by the time we get that person in place for you, for example, maybe it's too late, but if you keep us posted on that, I just don't want to miss the opportunity on, some of this funding that's available, just because we can't roll out enough grant process to access it.
Yeah.
Hope that makes
Mr.
sense.
Chairman, thank you. We'll take that note. And I think what I'd say is, no, thank you. That's a good idea. This is a 5-year program. So, we got to sort of keep, it's probably a marathon. But
I just want to make
people would
sure we
help.
maximize
Sure.
our effort in Wyoming, and I know you do
absolutely.
too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it would be a shame if we didn't have on the front end what it takes to access all the money that might be available to us.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, the other thing I might whisper in your ear in that regard would be a little bit of thought on, the ability to have an available pot of money for match and what that might look like.
Absolutely. I think that's a good suggestion, and committee, let's put that in our back pocket as we go forward also. Okay.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, moving on, in terms of wildlife projects, the I-25 fencing project, which is between KC and Buffalo, was let 2 weeks ago. And so I suspect that they will break ground in the spring. And that's really wildlife fencing for all those miles and to keep wildlife off the interstate. So that one's let. And then we're working with Game and Fish and with the WWNRT, Wyoming Wildlife Natural Resource Trust Fund, to really sort of pool resources and look at available grants. There's still not any information on the $350 million set aside for wildlife on IDGE, but we'll take a look at Kimmer, Dubois, and Halleck Ridge with the goal of doing wildlife projects in each one of those areas. In terms of ARPA funding, the $35 million that you awarded in the last session is standing by to be spent for WyoLink components. And 4.5 of that will go out to the locals, and those instructions have been put out, and the proposals have come back from our local governments for what to buy. Still waiting on the final implementation rules to make sure all the T's and I's are dotted in the legal arena, but I'd expect to see that pretty quick. And then standing by again on the 8.8 ARPA funding for aeronautics. Again, thank you for that, for those. I know this committee worked hard on both of those. The Jackson Airport runway opened on schedule, and lots of hard work on that runway. And certainly, you know, you could tell the difference in the economy of that town with the airport open and the airport closed. Electric vehicles, we did submit our plan 1st of August, and we're standing by for really the response from the federal government. Lots of exceptions in that plan, and we'll see how it comes out. The next step for us is to hire a consultant to help us through the implementation process of that. Just because, again, you start look internally and say, I'm not sure we have the expertise to do this. Let's make sure we get the best mind we can on that project.
So Director, I know I speak for all of us on the committee. There's a lot of interest in this area. And anything you can do as we go along to just keep us posted. And I know Melissa does a great job with that, but I would make a special request that as we hear and as we develop and mold that plan, the committee would love to hear about it, I'm sure. Because we get asked a lot of questions about what are we doing with these electric vehicles?
Absolutely, Mr.
Did I
Chairman,
see a
we'll do
hand
that.
go up down that direction? Okay.
Okay.
All right, Director, thank you.
The Chapter 1 towing and recovery rules, we did have public comment. The end of July, we had a lot of comments, and we're still working through that to adjust those rules. Now, those rules are for the guidance we received a while ago. I expect to get more guidance, maybe even as soon as, you know, this year and next session. I know we'll talk it later this weekend or later today. Yellowstone National Park, we already talked about that and the potential plow up there. Fuel tax equivalent in terms of electric vehicles has been a topic of interest on this committee. I just report to you that our fuel tax administrators are actually out on the road this week for the second week, talking to everybody that's got chargers, making sure they understand who owns them, and making sure to touch base. And the guidance, the memorandum we put out is we're going to start collecting tax the 1st of December. So, you know, the guys are working that one, and there are some complexities there, but I think we'll be generally correct as we get there. So that's the current status on that.
Mr.
Director.
Co-Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Director, with that, 1st of December is a hard and fast date to you. Am I correct?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, that's the guidance we currently put out.
Okay, and so there are all these places that have put new chargers in or getting ready to pay the tax that's already on the books, correct?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, that's what we're working through. And, you know, it is, some will be easier than others. And so it's new forms, new processes. And, you know, when it's been interesting to take a hotel, for example, they hook, you know, they've got these chargers out in front, and they hooked it into the power of the hotel. And what the hotel is saying is, well, we don't have a separate meter for that. And so, well, they may have to put one in then. So it's those, you know, it's those issues of saying, hey, listen, we got to change the way we're doing business. I think we're doing it at the right spot. I mean, there's some out there, but there's going to be a lot more 10 years from now. So it's better to take the steps now than 10 years from now.
So follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
So Director, this is new point forward, 1st of December. are you looking at going back? Some of these chargers have been in place for 2, 3 years now of collecting those back taxes. And I can think of one specifically that they have a meter for a bank of chargers separate from anything else. Is there any intent to go back on, in effect, back taxes?
Yeah,
Director.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, I don't think we had gone there.
Okay. Do you plan to go there at some point?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, I'd have to think through that one a little bit, maybe get some guidance.
Okay.
But I'm not sure that juice would be worth the squeeze. It's just in terms of time and effort. You know, we're at the cusp and we're adding some, there's not a huge amount out there. And it's just in terms of time for my staff and effort, I'm not sure that would.
Okay, thank you,
But
Director.
that's my off the cuff.
Okay.
That's my off the cuff.
Senator
yeah.
Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, are we talking about the 24 million that the feds put up for the 24 sites in Wyoming, or is that, are you talking about something else?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Senator Anderson, no, the 24 sites is the NEVI plan, which we will, you know, put in the next 5 years. This is a discussion of the charges that are already there. And the issue has certainly come up in town halls about, and really from the co-chairman about, hey, listen, you got out-of-state people who are passing through and not paying their fair share. So we'd like you to capture that fair share. And that's a true statement. Now, I'll tell you, the one thing we're also working on is if your vehicle is registered in the state of Wyoming and it's electric, you already pay a fee. And so we just got to make sure that we have a way to differentiate when you pull up to the charger. So if you're a Wyoming resident, that you don't have to pay, and that's added to the complexity that's involved there. And so as time goes on, you know, Mr. Chairman's, I think we may have to think our way through, you know, is that how we still want to do it? I think this is going to be an issue of software on the chargers. You know, if you've got a Wyoming driver's license or your VIN, you know, is registered in Wyoming, then you probably right now shouldn't be paying the extra tax.
Director, I think this is going to be a work in progress for quite some time. You know, so I agree with you on that.
So
Mr. Co-Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Director, with that, if a rancher buys fuel, pays the tax on it, but uses that fuel off-road, at the end of the year, they can claim a claim on those taxes that they've paid and get them reimbursed or returned by the state. Am I correct?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, you're correct.
Okay, so could we do something similar with these electric vehicles that they have to keep track of their charging and then claim a reimbursement from the state?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, that will probably likely be the stopgap until there's a technical solution to make sure we don't.
All right.
Right,
So-
because we don't want anybody to pay more than they.
And I agree. Nobody should pay more than their required tax, but it should be equal to everyone. Let's get what I've already put on the books years ago. So I would ask that you keep us informed at each of the meetings where you stand on that. So thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, absolutely. Moving on then to slide number 7. Just a quick update on, we have been summoned to see joint judiciary in the September 12th, 13 for the discussion of crosswalks and the issue of what we're doing to ensure really safety on roads. And this is a direct aftermath to the loss of the 13-year-old in Cheyenne. And so we have a presentation we'll give joint judiciary. My recommendation, Chairman, is that if we have time, we maybe put it on the agenda in November, just to make sure you know what I'm telling judiciary in terms of crosswalks and road safety. Didn't really think we had time this time. We could, but just know that we will be there talking, and we'll talk through the process, and it's a lengthy process of how we decide how people cross the road. And the rules are different for us than cities and counties. So it's, you know, it's more complex than one might think, as most things are. But I just wanted to make sure that you knew they were going to see joint judiciary. Their interest is the legal side of the equation correct if you hit and kill somebody in a crosswalk? that's their focus. But part of that was, hey, YDOT, please come tell us how you currently do your business.
Director, I think Ms. Jarvis already has that written down and thank you for that. We would appreciate a heads up in November. So thank you.
Okay.
Question.
Oh, just Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the update on the crosswalk. That's a very important area. I just want to make sure that we're including provisions in this plan for some sort of camera set up so that we have a way to record the egress and the entrance and egress to the crosswalk. Is that going on?
Director.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and Representative Henderson. So maybe a couple things there. One is, I think if you're talking some of the work going on there in the city of Cheyenne,
Yeah.
that's not on our system.
So,
And so I cannot speak to that. The items of cameras on our roads is we don't have them on crosswalks right now. And I think that would be an issue. We'd have to think our way through based on previous guidance we've received from this body.
follow up.
Go ahead, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that answer, Director. My interest is in the interest of safety, particularly for our young people going to and from school, is that we have a means available to record the incident. And so I would ask if there's a way to work together, as I know you do often on these important projects, so that we don't duplicate, but we do ensure that these critical pieces are included in our planning. Would you have a way to do that now? I mean, you have a very good STIP plan for our state, very good. And I just wondered if that's also integrating into some of these important areas locally, where you have, county, city, and state intermingling.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Representative Harrison, I might suggest that maybe we take that one for action and work that one offline and after here, just make sure. Yeah.
So Director, I think in November, we can get a pretty comprehensive look at where we are and that might be work we've got to carry into a next interim or something
Yeah.
committee, but very well, good thoughts shared, Representative.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, maybe if I could be so bold, I think, if we're already talking crosswalks in November, maybe we'll just add that to it about the concept of cameras. And because the first question I'd go back to is, whether, this, just the statute, we'll need to look at the requirements there and work our way through it. So,
Yeah.
no, because I was pushing for cameras in construction zones for safety. And so it's, we're all in the same boat there.
Thanks for that, Director. Appreciate
If I might add,
it.
Mr. Chairman, please.
Go ahead, Representative.
Just real quick,
Then we're gonna move
there's
on.
an opportunity here. We're all resource constrained. And there's an opportunity here where when your equipment's out and about in the city or county, that's an opportunity to make sure that we can get the most value out of our public dollar. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Representative Henderson, I absolutely concur. And I would share with you that I tell you, we have great partnerships around the state and no better than in Cheyenne. We work very closely with that MPO there.
Okay, thank you, Director.
Mr. Chairman, I'd
Please
like
continue.
to
Yeah.
let Lieutenant Colonel Ratliff just talk briefly about a nice success with the patrol.
Good morning, Anna. Good to see you. Thanks
Good
for
morning,
being
Mr.
here.
Chairman. And thank you. Shannon Ratliff with Highway Patrol. Just a quick highlight of something we've done in an effort to stay abreast of what's happening in our nation and certainly right here in our own state with illicit drugs and certainly fentanyl, which I mean, we're all aware is extremely dangerous and deadly. We took it upon ourselves to partner with our own canine vendor, Macor, out of California, Precision Explosives, another vendor that we train with our explosives canines, and CNCA, the California Narcotic Canine Association. That's our certifying body that certifies all of our dogs annually. We have narcotics detection canines as well as explosive canines. But we got together and we did one of the first in the nation training to detect fentanyl, and certainly the first in the state. Again, simply to try to keep abreast of what's going on, so we can address these dangers both for the public. We can detect and take these illicit drugs off of our roadways, as well as for the protection of the officers, so that, you know, if that fentanyl is detected, that they can take those precautions and protect themselves, so they're not exposed to those
So Colonel,
dangerous chemicals.
sorry to interrupt, but
No, you're
let me ask you, so is that a special training that they've had to provide for these dogs to do that? Tell me about the detection piece. What,
Mr. Chairman, it's the odor that they work off of. The dogs, as we know, have noses that are just incredible. The trick, if you will, with fentanyl is to not expose the dog to fentanyl, but to train them on the odor. And these other bodies have that experience, and introduced a way for us to do that safely, for both the handlers and the canines, and worked phenomenally. We're going to continue to train. This was one canine in Cheyenne. Incidentally, if you're not aware, we're renowned for having some of the best detection canines in the country, and we're gonna continue to train all of our dogs with the detection of fentanyl.
okay, thanks. Okay, please continue, Colonel.
Thank you, Colonel Ratliff. Mr. Chairman, the next topic is RIS. And it's again, our privilege that ETS is here, and I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Sheehan. Slide number 8.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Timothy Sheehan, Deputy State Chief Information Officer. Just a quick update on RIS. As you may recall, we did release the RFP back on May 16th with an original submission date due by for vendors on July 20th. We did offer 2 extensions at their request, and ultimately, I believe the due date was extended to August 9th. We did receive 7 proposals that are currently being reviewed by the scoring team. I think in part to effort of WYDOT changing the approach to the RFP.
Thank you. That helps us.
Sorry about that. Changing it into a multi-stage project rather than one single approach. We saw one of the highest response rates comparatively to other states with those 7 responses. And our review is to be completed September 26th. And then I'd stand for any questions if there are any.
A lot of work went into the development of that proposal. Do you think that's why we got a good response out across?
Mr. Chairman, I believe so. And we also had several workshops that we did offer, vendor days, opportunities for the vendors to come in and ask questions, learn a little bit more about the project. We tried to be as completely transparent about the process and make it well known. We wanted any and all solutions brought to the table to think outside the box on this.
What can you share with us in terms of the level of the proposals? Are you pleased? I mean,
unfortunately, because it is an active review, I can't share too much just with procurement rules, but I would say we generally are happy.
Okay, good. Mr. Co-Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Mr. Sheehan, Director, I may have a lot more questions than others do for obvious reasons. So the 7 proposals, were these companies that you say wished would provide a proposal? Or are they companies that you hadn't really heard much from before? I don't want you to divulge the companies you're still actively engaged in the review.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, we received a mix of what we'd say traditional vendors and non-traditional vendors in the response.
So follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I'll have a number of follow-ups. So
Sure, go ahead.
thank you. So with that, you'll review the proposals, and these are only for the first phase, which is driver's license. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so after that comes in, you will install the new system. Correct me where I'm wrong, please. Install the new system, get the driver's license up and running, and then go out for another proposal on the next step, which is vehicles.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, that is also correct.
Okay, so the companies that have, Mr. Chairman, the companies that did provide a bid, are any of those companies that we've had reports on that put these systems in other states and had all kinds of problems with them? Or have you addressed that issue with the companies?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, we would look at each proposal on their merits and then look at history from there on.
Okay, so I think that concluded. One thing I would ask is that you're required to give quarterly updates to this committee and to appropriations. And I think we're getting to the point where we'd like to see a lot more information than we currently have. Just, status, where we are, what we're doing. For example, do we have a vendor for the computer system itself? Or is that in this proposal? Does it cover just the vendors for the equipment, or the vendors and the software and programming?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, I believe when we submit our next quarterly update, we'll be able to provide some additional details. In our last update, we were vague on purpose just because of the active procurement. Once we move past that into award and contract negotiations, we should be able to share more of those details intimately.
Okay, so I would ask that you do provide those details, especially on the hardware and the software and the programming. And I know the programming is the big issue and the reason for the amount of money that we're going to invest in the system. So, and are we still on track to have that system completed by the due date?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, yes, I do believe we are still on track to hit that target date of, I believe, 2027.
Okay, thank you.
I think the concern, gentlemen, is just that this is a group that is going to be asked about it. We're going, as we go into a session and work with our appropriations partners, we're going to need to be in a position to advocate to the best of our ability. And so thanks for that.
Senator Pappas.
Senator Pat.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got a little confused over the question about the RFP. You said there was going to be another RFP process for the driver services project and for the vehicle services project. I don't really see that in the schedule that was provided. My understanding was the RFP process were for all the phases.
Mr. Chairman,
Is that not correct?
That is incorrect. Originally, that was the intent, was to do a release for all. After some consideration and reviewing what our options are, we felt the best approach was to break that up into those smaller chunks. If we were to treat it, say, like a traditional road project and go out that 10 years, we'd have an obsolete product at the end. So if we do that iterative process, we can always ensure we're staying with current technology as we hit that next part of the project. Follow up. Go ahead, Senator.
Well, then it doesn't, if I look at the driver services line and the business licensing, the driver services and the business licensing and the vehicle services project, there's really nothing in there that gives you enough time to run another RFP process. Am I missing something, or does this slide need to be updated? I don't think you have time for those and still maintain your schedule.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Pappas, these projects can run in part concurrently. They don't have to run consecutively. So we can start part of driver services, get that underway, and then start the planning and development for that RFP for the next part of that project, and then continue on. But
Mr. Chairman, and Senator Pappas, just to follow up, and I agree with what Mr. Sheehan said. I'd say more detail be timelined out on this, on the second and third phase. And we just need to add to the chart. You're right, it's not on this chart. And so there's enough detail to get us, through this first couple years. And now, we'll chunk this, we'll get this RFP, we'll get this contract awarded and get those, that team working, and then we'll start focusing on phase 2 and phase 3.
Back to you, Mr. Co-Chairman.
So I guess, Mr. Chairman, thank you. So Director, Mr. Sheehan, I guess the request would be, and if you can do it briefly here, is to give the committee an update on the thought process that went into just bidding the driver's license first. We've talked about that, and for the audience, all of this comes from a personal bill, which was my bill, so I've kept track of the department's activities, whereas the rest of the committee may not have kept track as closely, and appropriations has worked closely on that. So just a little bit of background on why why you did what you did, and you don't have to go into great detail. So that's the first question, if you would do that. And the second question is how did Mr. Rossetti escape getting in the hot seat?
Mr. Chairman, I was just about to summon.
Well,
Thank you.
as you guys ponder an answer for that, let me just back up for the sake of all of those who are tuning in on the live stream or here in the room. This is a massive information system that affects a lot of different functions of government. It's not just the transportation system. And so that's what we're talking about. It is a very robust, brand new information system for the state of Wyoming. So, gentlemen, he asked a question. So, Mr. Co-Chairman, jump
Mr.
back
Chairman,
in anytime you
if I
want.
might make a brief statement
There you
first,
go.
and again, for the people in the room and those on the virtual realm. A lot of our personal state records are in this system. If you call for a birth certificate, it probably goes through this system. Department of Health has stuff in this system. It takes in an awful lot of the weight, what the state does, election results and that. So although it resides in the Department of Transportation, it affects every person in the state in some manner. So with that, Mr. Sheehan, Director, Mr. Rossetti, now that you're in the hot seat, if you'd care to just enlighten us a little bit, please.
Good morning, Mr. Rossetti. Good to see you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, Taylor Rossetti, Support Services of WYDOT. Real brief, I think that one of the reasons that we kind of switched gears here was as Mr. Sheehan mentioned was, I think this allows us to take advantage of things as the technology changes so that at the end of this thing, we're not completely obsolete and starting back over. So that was really one of the reasons that we phased what we phased. Why we chose to do driver services first was that information is the system that we own in entirety. We are the only entity involved in the driver's license and identification systems. So that data and whatever needs to be manipulated within that data in order to make a system work was completely within our control. So that was why we chose to go that direction. The reason that then business licensing is next, and that might be a little bit confusing, and that's something we can change as we update you later. But we are involved in like auto dealer licensing and audits and such, and we don't currently have a system for that. So that's the reason that business licensing was the next phase, because again, that's a system that we're largely in control of. So as far as data requirements and how that system is going to be built, we've got complete and final say over. When it gets down into the motor vehicle side, as you guys are aware, that process is largely handled by the counties. And we partner with the counties in order to get that information, and then they feed their information to us, and that goes into that system. So we have information on all of the vehicle registrations, all of the title information, whereas counties have their portions of it. So as we thought about the complexity of getting this system built, we decided to start with the things that we were completely in control of. And then we are continue to work with the counties in order to make sure that the data structure is set up so that we can be successful as we move into that final phase. As you mentioned, we felt it was critical enough that we wanted to make sure we got the driver services stuff under our belt and then learn and then go from there. So that's kind of a brief overview of how we got where we are.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Co-Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I think you now know what we're looking for on the updates. Didn't want to spring this on you, but we've talked, Mr. Rossetti and I have talked. So you have an idea of what we'd be looking for a quarterly report going forward. And just let us know where you stand, what you're doing, so that we can answer questions when they come up. And that we can help you if problems come up that you need the committee to step in. So,
Yeah.
good job,
Mr.
gentlemen.
Sheehan, thank you for all your efforts on this. Mr. Rossetti, appreciate it. Committee, this is something that you'll hear a lot about as we go forward. And it's an important exercise. Obviously, it's an expensive one. So Representative Henderson, did you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A real quick question. If we could, would it be possible to include in the next update on the vulnerabilities that are involved here, how this update is going to address each one of those vulnerabilities for our state and how it's going to fix it?
Mr. Sheehan,
Can that happen?
I know there's been a lot of conversation on the front end of that. So
Mr. Chairman, Representative Henderson, if it would be okay, because we would talk specifically about potential or actual vulnerabilities, I prefer that would be a confidential document or a.
yeah, thank you. Yeah. Okay, please proceed. Director or gentleman.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank
Mr.
you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Chairman, was a wide ranging update. Because there is a lot going on in this agency, as you can tell. My thanks really to our partnership with Mr. Sheehan and the entire crew there at Enterprise Technology, because we've got a great team working forward here. I tell you, I think unless you have specific questions, the next on anything we've covered, the next two topics in your book, I would. Actually, why don't you, we do have one more. I'm sorry, one alibi.
While you're looking, Director, I would remind, we're going to go to public comment on your opening remarks for this morning as soon
Okay.
as we finish up this section, just so everyone knows, but back to you, Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So in your book, I'd point out that there's an air service report and also our third quarter STIP updates. Had no intent to cover those. Thank you, Heather, for providing those. We submit those to LSO periodically, every quarter, and they're there. If you've browsed through the STIP, you'll see there's actually a lot of additions in this STIP. If you see in the left-hand column a project that has the acronym BFP, Bravo Foxtrot Papa, that's the Bridge Formula Program. So those are the bridges, county bridges, city bridges, or state bridges that have been added to the STIP based on that $45 million. So you can sort of track the money and what bridges is going to in what county that way.
Okay, committee, if you have any questions on those reports that are contained in your packet, please grab the director or Mr. Rossetti offline. Okay.
Absolutely. Mr.
Thanks.
Chairman, the only other thing that I'd like to bring up in the update has been something that has been asked more frequently recently, and in fact, our commission addressed it here last week. And the issue has been really this feedback from our constituency in the state about sort of the fuzziness of our pictures on our driver's license. And if you look at it, they actually are fairly fuzzy, right? And so we do have some information that's being passed out. I'd like to, what I maybe is just ask Taylor, Mr. Rossetti, just give us like the elevator speech. And Mr. Chairman, if you have some time at the end of the day, I might ask that we bring it up. There is a way to fix it. It would take a statute change and the elimination of one word in a statute.
Okay. Mr. Rossetti, for some of us, that fuzzy picture is a good thing, but anyway, take it away. What's the issue?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also saw it as a win for me personally.
Yeah.
Really, the document that Heather's passing out to you right now, I think summarizes it well. We did switch our ID card in 2019, and I believe I did brief the committee at the time. Obviously, membership has changed. But what we had found was our old method of doing our ID and driver's license cards was just really not that secure. It was actually fairly easy to fake those documents. So I maybe went a little aggressive on the security side of things, and that gives you the credential we've got today. So that is a very secure card. At the time that we did that card, we had 3 technologies that no other entity in the United States had. So it is a very secure credential, but one of the drawbacks to that is the process that card is made by is actually laser engraving. So you're actually no longer printing an image, you're actually shooting a substrate with a laser, and that's actually pulling dye out of it. That process, as far as refining and making good color reproduction, is not quite as far along as we had hoped it would be. One of the considerations that we could make is going to a black and white photograph. It does reproduce very, very well. There are multiple states that are already doing this, as well as all the provinces in Canada. So that's kind of a brief summary, and I think that document provides a little more detail if you'd like to discuss it later.
Mr. Chairman, what I add to that is that in statute, the requirement does say that we have to print a color photo. And so the proposal would be if we struck the word color, that would give Mr. Rossetti and his staff the ability to take whatever the best solution is, whether it's color or black and white. But right now we don't have that option.
So, I think in the interest of time, committee, let's go ahead and deal with this real quickly. And Heather, my initial reaction would be that we ought to draft this up. I think what we're going to do with driver's license bills, and there's a couple of them for later in the day. I think the co-chairman and I have decided we'd like to push those forward to November. And director, that would be a good timing to bring this one in. The two bills that I'm referring to, committee, involve license plates. And you might remember the organ donor license plate, and now we have a request for the community colleges. I think we'll push those to November. We'll have plenty of time to look at those bills in the meantime and be ready to vote on them in November, and we could bring that one forward. So Heather, if you would draft that up to eliminate the word color, and we can either vote that up or vote it down. But if the department feels like that's a better way to go, let's represent it in a bill and we'll take it up in November. Does that sound, Mr. Co-Chairman?
Sounds good.
Okay,
I have a question.
take it away.
So, Mr. Rossetti, just briefly and very quickly, does the Real ID federal statutes require a color, or is a black and white photo acceptable under the Real ID Act?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chair, the Real ID Act requires that we maintain a color photo. So that photo would still reside in our system. It would just not be reproduced on the credential.
Okay, thank you.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, you bring up a good point. I mean, we don't want to do something that's not in accordance with Real ID.
That's correct. There was a lot of bloodshed back when we passed that, and we've come too far down the river. Thank you both, gentlemen. I'm going to go to public comment. Offer public comment to anyone. Please come forward. Absolutely. On anything that we've covered so far. Okay, all right. Are we good to go? We're going to save it for a little later in the day, maybe. Okay, good. Anybody else? Public comment? Going once, twice.
Wait.
Representative Baker. Absolutely. Please do. Yeah. Okay, we're going to close public comment and let's move into the next section, which is Interstate 80. And all the issues that have come up over these past few months.
Mr. Chairman, if I might.
And naturally, one of the biggest reasons that we're here in this neck of the woods. So, Mr. Co-Chairman.
Never mind. I was going to thank Mr. Sheehan for driving all this way for 15 minutes.
I think, is he already exited? Okay, please pass that along for us. Those of you in the department, director, Mr. Sheehan came all the way over here and he's already headed back. So, okay, tell him thanks. Representative, it's good to see you this morning. Take it away.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'll just briefly start with a statement. And then I know that there's a couple of members of the public that would like to just share their perspective on the issue. And then maybe we can answer any questions. But personally, thank you for coming. Sure.
Representative, just if I might make a statement for those who are here and on the line. A lot of this to bring the meeting here and to discuss this issue was the work of Representative Baker. He took the lead on this, has had a lot of passion over this issue for a number of years, and this is kind of directed at his work and what he has done to bring the committee here to see the issue at firsthand and to hopefully try to get this resolved within a reasonable period of time. So just wanted to give you that credit, Representative. Thank you.
No, and thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I want to give you guys the credit as well for making the trip here, being willing to participate in the tour this at lunch. Just a brief just description of what we plan for that is it'll take about 20 minutes to drive to where we're going. So we're Representative Burt and I have lunch prepared for us there. So we'll just eat lunch there on site and we'll stay there about 20 minutes and 20 minutes to come back. So if we have an hour and a half lunch, you should have about a half hour, hopefully with planning to do whatever afterwards. So I'd really appreciate everybody joining if you could. With that being said, also, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for continuing to speak about the issue because as we legislators get tired and we have our personal things going on, sometimes things fall through. And Mr. Chairman, you offered the tour and this sort of stuff, the working lunch is an option for us, and I appreciate that. So thank you for that as well. This is something that really, I was raised here in Sweetwater County. I went to school in Rock Springs. I attended this community college and graduated from here. I went to high school here in Rock Springs. I spent most of my life living in Rock Springs. Green River was always a rival. You know, the football games and wrestling and all that stuff, it was always just a rival. You'd see the kids at the party, you know, and you'd be like, oh, you're from Green River or whatever it was, right? So growing up, Green River was always kind of had that rivalry, but I never really paid a whole lot of attention to Green River and the needs that were in Green River. Well, that changed when I moved from Rock Springs to Green River because now I live in Green River and our office is in Rock Springs. So I drive the road between Rock Springs and Green River regularly. Prior to that, I never really drove the road. Okay, I would come to Green River. I would go to Green River to license my vehicle, maybe attend the Flaming Gorge days, maybe float the river. If there was something to do, I would drive to Green River, but I never really drove over there. But now that I live in Green River and work in Rock Springs, I'm on that road consistently and I'm seeing the needs. So this is something that I wasn't really aware of. So I didn't have the opportunity to take up this issue in my previous service when I represented Rock Springs. But now that I live in Green River, I see the need. And here's part of the issue. You can take a state highway on either side of the two communities. So you can take a Rock Springs to Point of Rocks, and from Green River to Little America, you can take a state highway owned by the state that parallels the interstate for 30 miles. But the only road that's paved in between the two communities is the interstate. So that makes it a unique road in the state for a couple of reasons. One, it's identified as the busiest road in the state, traffic-wise. Two, all those people that want to avoid the traffic, they have no options. So that really hinders things. And I'll just give you a couple quick examples, and then I want to let some members of the public just share their own personal perspective. Just recently, we had a parade for our Red Desert Rodeo and the start of kickoff of the fair. We were going to go over to the parade, and we were the day of the parade. We were going from Green River to Rock Springs, and there was a business that had made their float. Okay, so imagine making a float in Green River and trying to get to Rock Springs with traffic going 85, 2 lanes just passing you, and you're on the shoulder trying not to die. Okay, so here's another example, right? So you live in Green River and the Home Depot's in Rock Springs. You want to go get a load of gravel or wood or whatever it is and take it back to Green River. Your only option is to get on the interstate that is 75 miles per hour speed limit technically, but most of the traffic goes 85. And I'll tell you this, and then we'll move on. This is why. The previous director of the Highway Patrol spoke often about the 3 E's in the roads, which is the education, the engineering, and the enforcement. Unfortunately, the road between the two communities is engineered so that enforcement isn't possible. There's only a couple places in the state where I-80 actually separates. The eastbound and the westbound lanes, the line of sight separate. So this is one of those areas where So the road separates completely between the two communities. So the local traffic knows that it's impossible to enforce that. So local traffic goes 85 or 90. So it just compounds the issue. And it really is, I think, an issue that when we take a 30,000-foot view and we look at the fact that there's a parallel state highway, I think that this should be a state highway. I really think it should be a state responsibility. And I'll just make this point and then we can move on. The two communities existed prior to the interstate. There was a road there prior to the interstate. The interstate became the option for the people prior to all of this traffic that really is now on the road. So at the time, it was the best option for the county. It's like, yes, upgrade our road, make it an interstate. It'll be our only option. Now things have changed. We need another option for our community. And then this is the last thing I want to share. I just came back from driving from Wichita, Kansas to Green River. It's a 13-hour trip. The last 20 miles took us an extra hour, and I'll tell you why. The construction that's going on right now, there was an accident going from Rock Springs to Green River. And on Sunday night and Sunday, I'm aware now that Wednesdays and Sundays are crossover days. It's our busiest time on the interstate. We were coming home this last Sunday and we left at 5 to try to get here at a decent time. And then I got to Rock Springs and I sat on the road for 45 minutes. Okay. Because there was no alternate route. So I'm 8 miles from home, and the longest part of my trip was the last 8 miles because there was an accident. Okay, so currently they're doing construction on a bridge, which we'll see at the tour at the mile marker 97. They've got you over in the slow lane. The accident was over in the other lane. Okay, so then people are getting confused and all the traffic is saying, okay, merge right. Well, the accident was actually in the right lane. So people had to merge left and then merge right. So again, the local traffic, they were getting off the road at Cruel Jacks and taking that road and the trucks. Okay, I couldn't do it. I was in a car, right? So again, on a 13-hour trip, I added an extra 45 minutes in the last 12 miles, right? So it's just very frustrating that there's nothing available for the local community. And so I just want to offer that perspective and really just, I appreciate everybody that will attend the tour. I think it'll be a great opportunity to just really see the issue. So thank you for the opportunity to speak and to coming here and to allow you to really get an eye on the issue.
Representative, I'm concerned about your passion on the issue. You know, I wish you had a little more passion. I'm kidding. No, it's just the committee, just to kind of back up a little bit. This is not setting any kind of precedence. If we would desire to do something about this, it's something we've done before. This committee has stepped up and pushed hard for a road change up in Campbell County. I'm looking down at Senator McEwen. He knows what road we're talking about. We moved a road up there for that community. We have moved a road over in Kemmer before. So taking up issues like this is what we do and what we should do. And so the co-chairman and I felt strongly about getting over to get a good look at what we've got going on. And you did a great job, Representative, of kind of encapsulating what the issue is. Committee, any
Chairman,
questions?
could I just add
Yeah.
one thing? We got a
ahead, Rick.
2008 report. It was a feasibility study. And that was, again, I'll just remind you that I was first elected in 2012. So there was a lot of work done on this issue prior to me ever being elected, and I really wasn't aware of it. But there's also a design report that's by IME, and it includes aerial and ground mapping, and it's building on the 2008 report that you got. So I sent you another just email this morning. Take a look at it. It includes the design report, but it doesn't include the engineering aspect of it. But also, I just want to point out, there's a couple excerpts that show the options that are available and what's needed next in proceeding and moving forward. So if you get during the break, just take a look over there and you can just take a look and I can answer any questions there too. So thank you.
Give us some brief update.
And also, Mr. Chairman, if I might, while we're just pause for a minute, I did want to recognize, we got Senator Kolb here. I did see our County Commissioner Lauren Schoenfeld and a couple members of the County Road Department. We got Gene Legursky and Eric Bingham here. And then we have a couple members of the public that I know that want to testify. So if we could just get their perspective, that'd be great.
Representative, thank you. And I was about ready to recognize that fellow senator out there, Senator Coleman, and appreciate you recognizing other individuals here. Dr. Dale is also here, and thank you, Madam President. Well, how about that? That's wonderful.
Mr. Chairman,
Madam President, thank you for the hospitality. It's nice to be here and it's good to be back on campus. I spent many times visiting this campus during my time at Casper College. So Representative, go ahead.
well, Mr. Chairman, I don't know what the policy is on the donuts, so I just want to ask the President's forgiveness for bringing the donuts.
Yeah, you might be in trouble. So Representative Burke, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Baker, you've talked about the frustration you had on your way home. But you didn't highlight last year's issue we had when we had bridge work going eastbound. And could you highlight some of the main concerns you have within the community of Green River when it comes to ambulatory services trying to get to Rock Springs, which is where our emergency room is? And you know, last year I travel that road as well when I go to work as well. And most of mine's on a motorcycle, so I have a different perspective when it comes to traffic, stuff like that. But I think one of our primary concerns is last year we had almost a 7 to 8 mile backup and how that would affect those kinds of care.
Representative. Go
Thank
ahead.
you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the question. It just really highlights further the issue. So last year, the construction, we have the 97 mile marker and they did the eastbound lane. This year, they're doing the westbound lane. So going from Rock Springs to Green River. Last year, they were doing the eastbound lane. So going from Green River to Rock Springs. That was actually backing up on a regular basis all the way to Green River. And so it was taking people regularly 45 minutes to get from Green River to Rock Springs. But the real point that I do want to make is that you brought up is the fact that, you know, the community of Green River is often forgot and lumped together with the community of Rock Springs. Well, we have Lander and Riverton. They're two separate communities. You know, we have Sheridan and Buffalo and Gillette. They're three separate communities and they're never really lumped together. They have their own emergency services, fire departments, hospitals, all that stuff, right? But Cody, Buffalo, same sort of thing. You know, they're never really lumped together. They're kind of sister communities. They may be in the same county. They, you know, they share a lot of resources, but they're never lumped together like Rock Springs and Green River. Rock Springs and Green River, they share one hospital. We share one Walmart. We share one VA facilities. We have only one fairgrounds, you know, so it's all that traffic that lives in Green River often travels to Rock Springs. And what happens is when we have one of those incidents where there's an accident, it really, and I know Mr. Sheridan Norberg can talk to this, but what happens is when there's an accident, then the semis start exploring alternate routes. Okay. Or if it's backed up, and then you get the semis on the alternate routes that aren't really, you know, viable for vehicles. And then all the resources are then diverted to the alternate route to get a semi that decided that because of Google Maps said it's a road, they're going to take it. So just a lot of compounding issues, I think, that could really be addressed. But thank you for the question.
Yeah, thank you. Representative, thanks. I'm going to ask to hear from YDOT a little bit so the committee can maybe have, if they have any questions of the director, but you can stay put and the director can just join you up there if that works. So Director Reiner. Director, I
Mr.
guess
Chairman,
I would offer to allow you to make any comments you'd like to make on one of the reasons why we're visiting this neck of the woods, and then I probably have a question or two for you.
Sure. You bet, Mr. Chairman. And really, you know, my hat's off to Representative Baker and Burt. Certainly, they have we've spent many hours discussing this. And I think as you look at this issue, we sort of look at the grand, state all. And I don't think anybody in Wydot is, opposed to having another road. We might suggest that it's better served by the county, not by the state. For, as we've looked at, hey, how come you haven't built it? I would put it down to it's money and fiscal resources. As you are well aware, we have a set of guiding principles that says our intent is to maintain what we have and really not expand our system, because we don't have money to maintain what we currently have. And so it becomes a discussion of risk and resources. And so that's probably, where you get, it's sometimes when you explore these options, maybe the answer isn't another service road. Maybe it's a third lane on the interstate. One of the items that has come up in the past is, hey, if it's bad weather and the interstate's closed, then we could take the secondary road. Well, that's true, except that our policy at Wydot is we always clear the main line first, and we don't clear the secondary roads. So there's some general guiding thoughts on where we're at. Our task in Wydot is to connect communities, and these communities are connected. Now, I know they aren't connected in a way that might be the best, but right today, there's an interstate, and there's two lanes both ways that connects the issues. And I understand this issue about fairgrounds and hospitals and a college and shared services, and that's a good point. Typically, when you're sharing it, if it's one community, then again, that might lend to more the nature of probably a county type road. Mr. Chairman, I could probably talk more. That's enough. Let me just, with your permission, see if our chief engineer would add anything to that discussion.
Chief, any thoughts this morning?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commission. For the record, Mark Gillette, Chief Engineer for WYDOT. And no, I don't have a lot more to add. Again, WYDOT is in preservation mode right now for a reason. And as the director mentioned, would be excited to build a new highway if we just had the resources to do that. And with that, that's about all I have.
Chief, if we had a magic wand and could do anything we wanted to do, does it say to you that we ought to attack the interstate and try to get another lane there? Or would it be your thought to get that alternative route? And which effort would be the least expensive?
Mr. Chairman, as Representative Baker pointed out, there was a feasibility study done in 2007, 2008. I do not believe that a third lane on the interstate was looked at, but to the best of my knowledge, I would have to say that building a third lane on the interstate would be probably cheaper. Although I'd have to look into that a little bit further, but that's what my gut tells me today.
Mr. Co-Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Gillette, I have a copy of the report here from 2008. I don't think any of us were here in our positions in 2008 that had influence over this report. So, and I have not had a chance to read it. We just got it this morning, and thank you for it. We need to look at it and resolve it. But in the report, if you could please, because I know you're familiar with it, what was the alternative that was ultimately picked? I don't want to redo a whole bunch of work just to come back to the same answer. So can you give us an idea of what that alternative looked like that was the best alternative?
Mr. Chairman, certainly, there was basically two alternatives looked at, one on the north side of the interstate, one on the south side. The one on the north side had two variations. The one on the south side had three variations. Most of those variations are how they hook up with the two cities and what streets and things that they hook to. The preferred alternative from the study was 1B, which is the route on the north side of the interstate, which runs from the east interchange of Green River all the way into Rock Springs, I think US 191 on the north side.
Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was from the feasibility study. There was a design report that actually elaborates a lot more. Some of those slides are actually the excerpts that I put over there on the table that show the options that are available, options 1, 2, and 3. It does seem like the north side is probably the preferred option for a number of reasons. There's only two landowners. One is Rock Springs Grazing and the other is BLM. Also because of the sun and the railroad being on the south side, it seems like that the north side is most feasible. The other thing too is with all due respect to YDOT and their budget, we have an opportunity here, I think, to capitalize on federal dollars outside of the state. YDOT has gone to the federal government and asked for money for the I-80, I-25 interchange, rerouting all of Interstate 80. I feel like if this project were one of those projects that were presented to the federal government, that maybe the federal government would be interested in capitalizing on something like this as a lower option. When we look at the rerouting of I-80, I-25, I believe it's been brought down to about 700 million. And the I-80, I-25 interchange is about 325 million. A road like this, based on the design report, I just want to make a couple more comments quickly. That initial, and the way the road works now is it actually travels all the way up towards the tunnels, and then where the Green River Cemetery's at, it actually comes underneath the interstate and then comes into town. So with the feasibility study initially, Green River was trying to capitalize on the fact of the improvements, and what they wanted to do is, because that road actually comes in through town, they wanted the improvements that would have been included in upgrading that road as well. Where if you speak with the local engineers, the best option really is to cut about a third of that off, the alternate route off, and bring the road in using a roundabout where the current interchange is at, so into Green River. So that saves a lot of money. I think that there's a lot of options and it could be flushed out if the conversation were continued.
Thank you. Mr. Co-Chairman.
So, Mr. Chairman, thank you. So going on your magic wand idea, a couple things. Would current statutes need to be amended to have you build a new road? Director, Mr. Gillette, I know there's some things in statute that says you can only do maintenance, but is there an amendment we'd have to run to statute to build new road?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, there's no change to statute.
Okay, so then that was placed in the original, the last fuel tax increase had items in there about maintenance only and no new construction. Does that still apply? I know it was backed off a little bit to allow you to use that money for some other things, but I don't think it was just free use, so to speak. Am I correct?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, really, I think the statute really said that the 10 cent needed to go to road projects.
Okay, so
Representative Obermuller, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director, has the discussion of this project happened or taken place in the Highway Commission? And if it has, what kind of thoughts came out of that? And why hasn't this risen to the level of the STIP that you presented to us?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and Representative Obermiller, it's been off and on in the commission, but probably not seriously about, hey, how should we do this or should we fund it? The bottom line is there's only so much money. And there's a lot of requests. And, you know, our responsibility is the use of the funds that are given us. And right now, most of that money goes to preserve the system that we have. So if it really boils down to how we as a state use the fiscal resources that we have. And that's the discussion here. So if we spend $60 million on a new road here, that's $60 million that doesn't go somewhere else. And that's a significant chunk of our budget. And so that becomes the crux of the issue is, you know, as a state all, we've allocated X number of dollars to our transportation system. Our task at YDOT is to use those resources. And as we've worked through that, as we look at the fiscal constraints, which are very real, that's where you say, we're going to focus on maintaining what we have. If you want to look at a road that's not maintained that we have, that to go drive Highway 77, which is sort of an offshoot on Shirley Rim. And our roads are not getting better. Our roads are getting worse. And the interesting thing about roads is, you know, the changes in sepsis. I mean, you can't see it, but over the years, it gets worse and worse. And so that becomes the discussion. There's a lot of things we'd like to do. The reality is, what can we do with the fiscal resources that we have? And so is there some federal grants available? Potentially. The ones we've put in specifically for the I-25, I-80 is really to maintain that interchange of two interstates and to fix it, because trucks keep falling over there. It's 60 years. It's the original interstate, the intersection that went in. And so the other grant that we've applied for this year is passing lanes between Shoshone and Casper. And so those are the two basically grants that we've applied for. And so that's in terms of, and we really don't probably consider it as new construction. The passing lanes maybe, but it's a safety issue for us there. So going back to your question there, Representative Miller, it's for us, it's a funding available resource issue and a prioritization issue.
Go ahead, Representative.
Thank you. So in regard to this particular project, was this project included in any discussion on what should be on a step and a decision made to leave it off the step because it just didn't fit your criteria or rise to the level that you thought should be dealt with right now?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Overmiller, this one did not make it to the STIP because it didn't meet our criteria in our funding guiding principles, which really, I think we briefed you, approved by our commission, talked to other electeds on it. And so it's not on the STIP because it doesn't meet our criteria.
Okay, gentlemen, I'm inclined to move on. We're gonna go to public comment here in a moment. We do have another bullet item under I-80 that we're gonna visit about during the break and throughout the lunchtime. I know we'll have an opportunity to visit with Representative Baker and Representative Burt. So in the interest of the agenda and time, we're gonna move on and come back. We'll have public comment here in just a moment on I-80, including this issue. But Director, we've got a bullet item just related to the pickup of rubbish and trash along I-80 that came up in the previous meeting. And any thoughts you have on that particular topic, please share them. We don't need to spend a long time on it, but it did come to us, and so we put it on the agenda.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just a couple of thoughts on trash. One is, none of us like to see it. It's certainly an eyesore, and our preference would be that people wouldn't throw trash out outside, but it happens. Typically, we get the most complaints on that in the spring when the snow clears and all of a sudden there's a bunch of rubbish out there. And then our crews head out and pick it up. Now, we probably don't have as many individuals out picking up trash as we wish. And that goes back to the manning issue that we have discussed here and you're well aware of. And so in the allocation of manpower, if it's fixed rail, guardrail, or make sure delinear posts work, or throw some fill in a pothole, or pick up rubbish, then you can probably figure out where that fits in the priority. But the guys do pick up trash. We do work it, but man, I'd be the first to say it's not all picked up.
So Director, this was an issue that came from a fellow legislator in particular, but it is an issue and it's worth visiting about that. The alternatives aren't great. I mean, you're talking man and woman power, and you're also talking, providing surveillance in some circumstances that costs money. So did the commission visit about this issue at all, Director?
Mr. Chairman, not in any significance, no.
Probably aware of the fact since we visited about it in May or whatever. Okay. Any questions on this issue? Okay, thank you, Director. Mr. Co-Chairman.
Director, just briefly, and I feel like I'm putting all of you on the spot here this morning several times, but I'll ask the question, any thoughts on what to do about it? Other than tell people stop throwing trash out on the highways. I mean, I've been out there cleaning up the roads. I routinely do it as we clean up in the town I live in. Any idea what to do other than have your crews out there picking up trash? And I think there are more important things for them to do. But you drive down the highway and you see all frankly, garbage, not just trash, on the highways.
In the parking areas.
In the parking areas. Any thoughts on what we could do to alleviate the issue?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, a couple thoughts come to mind. Maybe Mr. Gillette has a couple more. One is, certainly the Adopt a Highway program is successful in parts, where communities and volunteers will say, hey, we'll pick it up. I'm not sure that there's enough enforcement to increase a fine. I've certainly seen that tried before. That's an option. I think we're dealing with the employee issue. In terms of employee pay and retention, I mean, that's another option necessary to fully staff. We are not staffed along I-80 to the way we'd like to be. And so, could we take money and hire contractors is probably another option. Again, it's use of valuable fiscal resources on that. So there's a couple options out of that. Mr. Gillette, would you have any more?
Mr. Chairman, no, I wished our Adopt a Highway program would be more popular or used more. However, even then, we do run into issues with hazardous materials being dumped out there that are, you just don't have anybody pick those up. And so, and then we have things like refrigerators and that contain, chemicals. And so it is an issue. We're constantly trying to figure out what we can do to help that. But again, without trained individuals in some cases picking that up, and being down so many maintenance employees that we are right now, it's just a very tough thing to do.
So Director, just, I've thought about this issue since it came to us, and there's just not a whole lot of great options that we have. These parking areas along I-80 were specifically mentioned. Do we have adequate big trash bins there? I mean, if you have done a review, what did you find out on these parking areas? Is there something we can do
Yep.
that
Yeah,
we're not doing?
Mr. Chairman, just let me answer that in a second. I will also share, just in relation to what Mr. Gillette said, is we do, as part of our safety precautions, certainly ask all our maintainers to get all the hepatitis series because of actually, the sharps and other things that, I mean, there's some hazmat material. And so that's that issue there too. But in terms of the specific truck parking areas and rest areas, when we looked into that, there were some areas where there was not trash barrels. Now we have since then put trash barrels there, and they are, as the maintainers are up and down the road, they do empty those. Interestingly enough, as we dug into that a little bit, we used to have dumpsters out there. So, and then you'd hire a dump truck to come out and pick it up, but then the issue was we had people driving out from towns and bringing their couches and their fridges and so it was, and then that created its own issue. And so we've gone back to, what right now we have the 55-gallon trash barrels that are out there. And my guidance to the team is we'll keep those there and we'll empty those to try and ameliorate the issue there, at least in the rest of it.
Okay, thank you, Director. Committee, unless there's any other questions, we're going to move to public comment on I-80. Thank you all. Appreciate it, Representative Baker, and look forward to today having further visits as we go along here. I'm going to go to public comment, and then we'll take a break. So please come forward. And thanks for being here. I would ask that everyone please state your name clearly and get right up to the microphone so the committee can hear, and appreciate you being here. Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate the conversation on the bypass. Ironically, I'm going to be going back to the plant to talk about capital allocations myself.
Just
So
for the record, if you would do me the
Will
favor
do.
of identifying yourself.
Fred Von Ahrens, I'm the Vice President of Genesis Alkali Manufacturing Facility, and I very much appreciate several of you visiting our facility. Yeah. Also, I appreciate you visiting beautiful Southwest Wyoming. Appreciate you taking the time to come here. We're very proud of our area. The bypass is every bit of what you've heard so far. And I completely appreciate the prioritization process and what we heard from the DOT. I have my own capital allocation concerns as well. But what I would like to do is just kind of elaborate on a few things that have been said and have not yet been said. Public safety and emergency vehicles is clearly an issue. I've been stranded several times on the way to work or the way home, and have watched police, state troopers, ambulance trying to get to vehicles. It is just not easy. Whether we do something to expand the highway or we put a bypass in, I do believe it should be something that's on our priority list. The hospital issue is real, but also schools. In Green River, we were closing schools down. In Rock Springs, we were adding schools. I certainly wouldn't advocate having our school children driving up and down or being bused up and down I-80, but I would advocate a bypass. So I'd ask you to consider that as well. Finally, it's not a big issue. It only happened one time in my 12 years here. But when that highway closes, I've got 16 hours to staff my facility. We have right now over 900 employees there. We have 4 facilities that are producing soda ash. On top of that, you have Simplot, Exxon, and many other major manufacturing facilities here. that have to get employees to and from work. We were shut down long enough several years ago during a major snowstorm. My office was the Green River McDonald's. I could not get any closer to my plant. The only way we kept our facilities open was the eastbound from what we call the valley, Lyman and the other regions there, towns, were able to staff our facility and keep our facilities running. So there are some very significant issues, although the frequency is not that high. But they are concerns of the business and for our employees. So I'd just like you to take those into consideration as well. One of my employees from Rock Springs at the time, he since has moved to Green River, but the only way he got there is a Jeep on one of those bypass areas that are not safe to pass in a normal vehicle. But he was able to take a Jeep, and I would not advocate for my employees to go to work on a day-to-day basis that way. So thank you for your consideration. Be glad to take any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Good to see you again, by the way, and appreciated all of the hospitality yesterday. Sorry I couldn't attend the tour, but questions, Mr. Co-Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, go ahead. Go with.
Let's go to Senator Anderson and then we'll come back to the co-chair.
Mr. Chairman, did I understand you to say or infer that if you had the bypass route, you might bus children from Rock Springs to Green River? You wouldn't do it on I-80, but if you had the alternate route, you might do it?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Anderson, I may not be popular in the community by saying this, but I would advocate for it. I certainly don't have the power to do that, but both superintendents are very popular here, very strongly supportive of our school systems, but I would advocate for it. And the other thing is, we have Green River students that are coming here to this beautiful college that we're very proud of. I better say that, otherwise I'll be in trouble. But Dr. Dale, but we're very proud of the education partnership we have here. And there are students at Green River that do come here and they do have to travel that highway. And I'd prefer, if it was possible at some point in the future, they didn't have to.
Senator Murphy and then back to the co-chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I'm curious, I would ask some input to raise these funds for the bypass. What if the county taxed itself, took on debt? What are your feelings about raising taxes to each resident in the community to make this happen? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
There's a good one.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Fury. I grew up in New Jersey and California. I'm used to paying taxes. So for the right cause, for the right reason, Fred Von Ahrens would support taxation.
Anything else? Mr. Co-Chairman.
So Fred, you're currently busing a large portion of your employees, are you not?
Yes, sir. Yes,
So-
Mr. Co-Chair.
If that road is closed because everyone's on one bus that's now sitting in traffic or not able to even access the highway, you lose large portions of your workforce. Am I correct?
Yes, Mr. Co-Chair. Roughly 1/3 of my employees live in Rock Springs. Roughly 1/3 of my employees live in Green River. And thankfully, 1/3 of my employees live in the Valley area, which is how we were able to keep our operations running.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you
so
very
for
much,
being
Mr.
here.
Chairman,
Really appreciate
And
it.
Joint Committee, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, further comment. We're specifically on the topic of I-80 and travel between Green River and Rock Springs and other issues. Yeah, good morning. Thank
Good
you.
morning, Mr. Chair, Mr. Co-Chair. Lauren Shanefield, I'm a Sweetwater County Commissioner. Welcome to Sweetwater County. We appreciate you being here and being at our wonderful college. So this obviously has been an issue and a topic of discussion for a very long time. And our concern overall, and my concern as a county commissioner, is the safety of our residents. And that is a huge issue. My other concern is looking at the potential for adding additional costs, not just in the construction, but the maintenance and, overall taking care of this potential road, being dumped on the county. So, as was mentioned, additional tax. We have a specific purpose tax initiative that we're going through right now. And that, it's a very difficult process. These are basic infrastructure issues: sewer, water, roads, streets, everything, wastewater treatment plants and facilities. And so this is just one more additional thing on top of the needs that we're already struggling with. I believe Director Reinert already said the state's in preservation mode and the counties are all in preservation mode as well. This potential, if needed to be taken care of by the county, would add a minimum of 2 employees, upward of $100,000 a year, on top of additional plows and services to, that's not even maintaining the road and keeping it up over the years. The other concern that we have for safety is that if I-80 is closed, and that's the number one updated and plowed line of transportation in between, how is this road going to be any safer? We're looking at an upwards of 21,000 vehicles that would be put on a 2-lane road. If there's already congestion on a 4-lane interstate, I don't believe that adding that many vehicles to a 2-lane interchange or, difference. I think that's going to increase accidents, and I think it's going to actually lower the safety for our residents. I do believe that looking at the additional lane on I-80, whether that's on both sides or allowing it to be a changeable lane, is something that absolutely needs to be looked at. And I know that the report was done in 2008. That was a long time ago. And I'm sure that there's some other options. I know that that additional lane wasn't even addressed during that report. And so I think that some additional information potentially needs to be looked at to ensure that we're not just adding a burden of costs to the state or to the county in looking at how we can best handle the situation.
Commissioner, thank you. Appreciate you being here. I guess my question would be, and by the way, I've got to back up and say, I actually was here. I was on this committee back in 2008. And so this has been around for a long, long time, as have I. And I remember this report. So it's good to be back to at least revisit it. You make some very good points. My question to you is, if the state were to offer some kind of a matching program, what do you think the reaction would be on the commission and within the communities?
I think it would be favorable in comparison to just being a partnership with the state is always a good thing, as opposed to just having it solely funded and taken care of by the county.
Okay. Questions of the commissioner, Mr. Co-Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, a hypothetical question. And again, I tend to put people on the spot. I apologize. But if there was as the chairman said, some sort of mutual agreement with this, how do you think the county would take to taking over the road, but making an alternate road a toll road to pay for the maintenance, the upkeep, and everything else? And you can do it electronically. I know there's a real aversion, and I voted against toll roads in the state, but that might be an option that the use is limited, but if you do use it, you pay for that use to maintain the road. I'm just curious as to how you may, and the commissioners may feel about that. I know you can't speak for all the commissioners. But.
Absolutely. Mr. Co-Chairman, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe that is a thing that we need to talk about. But I also think that in looking at toll roads, there needs to be some public education done around that and some information shared about the reality of what that would look like for our Rock Springs and Green River residents, our mine workers, because we also don't want to burden our community additionally. If that would be a toll road used and tolled only by, certain out of state or things like that, then I think that would absolutely go over much better than adding additional fees to our community that's simply trying to get to and from another community within our county or to and from work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Lauren, thank you. It's good to see you
Good to
again.
see
Thanks
you.
for being here at the meeting this morning.
Thank you. We appreciate this conversation.
Much appreciated. Further public comment on I-80 and issues therein. Come on forward, and I would ask that you introduce yourself and speak into the microphone clearly so that we can hear you. Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman, Mr. Co-Chair, committee members, and of course, Representative Baker. My name is Will Lindsay. I'm a general manager of a retail store in Rock Springs. I've been with my company for about 19 years at the specific Rock Springs location for about 6 years. The only reason I'm withholding the name of the company is because I'm not authorized to speak on their behalf. I am speaking on my own experiences as a general manager of a retail store. To start with, to illustrate the language confusion between American English and British English, Winston Churchill once famously remarked that America and Great Britain were two countries divided by a common language. Likewise, I would like to say that Rock Springs and Green River are one community divided by a common interstate. We see major incidents that negatively impact this community, like as has been extensively talked about, weather closures, but even more than that, accident closures, because weather closures are usually only occurring during one particular season, but we have accident closures on a very, very regular basis. I believe we had, I can recall seeing on various Facebook groups, at least 3 or 4 different closures just in the last month alone during good weather when we really shouldn't be having those closures. This is somewhat exacerbated by the fact that people who are traveling locally have a different driving style than those who are driving cross country. And so we're taking, a very short space of interstate, 13 miles, and we're trying to jam 2 different styles of driving into that particular stretch, which causes some issues. The impact that we see on employers, as was already referred to, is unexpected and short notice labor shortages, which can cause employers to miss deadlines and goals, and worst case scenario, loss of revenue to that employer. But this also has an impact on employees too, in their unexpected inability to attend work can cause them loss of work, loss of money, and in the worst case scenario, running afoul of rigid attendance policies that end up forcing a termination of an otherwise productive employee when there shouldn't be any termination happening. I myself have had I had an employee in the previous 6 years that had two accidents causing him to miss at least 1 day of work, both accidents resulting in the totaling of his vehicle. And both of them were not his fault related. It was a maintenance issue. Both incidents were maintenance issues with a semi truck wherein a component had fallen off and then struck his vehicle. So obviously there's safety issues to be concerned about there too. There's an infrastructure philosophy called paving the cow paths. And I'm sure most members of this committee are familiar with this philosophy. If not, I would recommend looking it up. It's a philosophy that does not focus on forcing residents into a top-down designed infrastructure plan, but rather it observes how residents are choosing to use the existing infrastructure and adopting newer infrastructure to meet those needs. Some people may see Rock Springs and Green River as 2 distinct communities, but the cow paths demonstrate that local residents see them as one community. It's time for our infrastructure to represent that reality. And in my opinion, it's time to pave this particular cow path. Thank you for your time.
Will, thanks for coming. Appreciate you being here. Any questions? Much appreciated. Thank you. Further comment on I-80? Good morning. Please introduce yourself and be close to the microphone for us. Thank
My
you.
name is Carrie Collins, and I'm here today to represent myself and my husband, Danny Collins. We want to thank you very much for coming to to listen to us and to hear our voices today. I concur with the previous gentleman. We are one community, but we are very much divided by an interstate many times. And while I appreciate the idea and the thought of adding an additional lane, for some people, that still isn't the answer or the need that exists in having a secondary road that connects our communities. We have several senior citizens in our area who are not comfortable driving on the interstate anymore, which limits their ability to get medical services and retail services, because obviously those of us who live in Green River are limited to one grocery store, a hardware store, and an additional farm supply location. Short of that, there are a few little mom and pop places, but not many. Therefore, that need to have that road exist is great. Medical services and emergency services have been talked about. We've been delayed being able to get to medical services at the hospital over here a time or two due to backlog of construction, traffic, and just simply accidents and other weather-related dispositions. First time I got forced onto that old Lincoln Highway Road that we've referred to that runs north of the interstate, I had gotten on the interstate. It was snowing, an early September snowstorm. That was a significant amount of snow. I was trying to get to a parent activity at my employment, and it took me an hour and a half to get down that road between Green River and Rock Springs, which went from being 2 lanes to 4 lanes due to semis trying to drive on both sides of the 2 lined lanes. So the off the highway side as well as off the median side of the road. So four vehicles deep in some places trying to navigate that slick, snow-covered, icy by then road. Going home, which I had to get home, then became, hey, take that old highway road, which people were obviously on. Some people were stuck, which then created hazards that way as well. So even if that road, which ideally we would love to see be a paved roadway, even if work could be done to replace some of the old drainage systems that were there under the road and things, even if some of those things were to be repaired and that road were to be bladed and maintained out there as even a nice dirt road that didn't have all the pitfalls and you have to worry about getting stuck in a big divot that somebody's created when it's been wet, would be greatly, greatly appreciated and needed. We do traverse that road in our side-by-side currently. And sometimes in the summertime, we've even chosen to take it up over the top of White Mountain on what they called the Wild Horse Loop Tour Road to get back and forth between here due to construction backups and things. And however, that road, when it comes to winter time, is not passable. But it does, it increases the time it takes to get over here and back, but it is an option and it does help and it is greatly appreciated. So even if we could take up that conversation to maybe take that old Lincoln Highway and create a truly usable dirt road out there that people could travel back and forth on, I think that's a great idea. So that would be my input today, that something does need to happen, and that, you know, adding a third lane to the interstate still isn't necessarily the answer or the need for some of the citizens that live here.
Thank you, Ms. Collins. I appreciate it. And I would say that when this report came out those many years ago, we didn't have the traffic we have now. And you did a good job of pointing to that. It's gotten a lot busier. Mr. Co-Chairman. Senator
Mr.
Anderson.
Chairman, Mr. Chairman, one of the suggestions today was a local tax to pay for part of the road, maybe not all of it. Are you in favor of that?
You know, we had a special tax election, election last year in which a resounding county said no. You heard Lauren speak that there is now another conversation about a specific use tax that the communities here have worked on very hard to get put together. And the feeling in this community when you talk to people is still a resounding no. You know, we live in such a time where everyone, and I mean everyone, has to live within a specific budget. And that trickles down from the highest to the lowest. We ourselves are in a situation where my husband is on disability, and so income is limited. So we have to pick and choose very carefully. And so while many things like that are needed and necessary, there are a lot of people in this community who say, not this tax, not this time. We're trying to survive. All of us are trying to survive. So I think some of that really comes into play. I myself, if they said, hey, we want to do XYZ with this road to have another way to get between these communities, I myself would be in favor of that. I'm not opposed to Lauren's suggestion of perhaps creating that side road as a toll road, which would keep some people off of it, but it might then still be able to put some that need it to be able to do that. So I'm not opposed to a discussion about that as well.
Further questions? Mr. Co-Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Collins, you mentioned senior citizens. If that road was upgraded, potentially paved, do you feel the senior citizens would use it?
Oh, I know several people who would then feel comfortable using it to get over to the hospital or to doctor's appointments, those kinds of things. Where now currently that either has to be arranged with somebody to take them and to transport them or other things because they're just not comfortable driving on the interstate.
Thank you.
Ms. Collins, thank you. I'm sure you can understand where the senator was coming from. You know, can you help yourself? And then maybe we'll step in, kind of like we tell our
Yep.
kids, you know, if you're helping yourself, we'll come and help you. We went through this, you know, on the airport. The airport needed some help, and
Yep.
This was one of them in the state. And we kind of tried to provide an opportunity through an airport district, and that was turned down. So we're always interested in what the community can do for itself because our resources are limited too.
Well, and we do have to work together to make it happen.
Right.
That's just the bottom line.
Yep. Thank you for being here. Really
Welcome.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Further comment on I-80?
I'm disabled one.
Good morning. Thanks for being here.
My name's Danny Collins. I've lived in Sweetwater County my whole life. I spent a lot of time on that road in my side by side. And the worst part of that whole road is the old asphalt, the potholes. You could lose a Volkswagen in one of them potholes. I'm one of them. If we could just get the old asphalt tore up and made a good dirt road, I would be happy with that. I think it's a very important road. One thing for the emergency vehicles, get around road closures and stuff like, I mean, I feel it's a very important road. Like I said, I'm on it a lot on my side by side. I drive to Rock Springs on that road. But a side by side is a little bit different than a car. So if any possible way we can get that road fixed or paved, I would love it a lot.
So Mr. Collins, there's no maintenance going on right now on that road.
No, sir.
Neither of the municipalities or the county does anything with that road.
No, sir. Nobody does anything on that road, but I think me, and I drive on the road.
Okay.
Like I said, the potholes on the asphalt part of that road is amazing. I mean, there are potholes, like I said, it'd swallow a Volkswagen. And if you don't know where they're at, and if you don't watch what you're doing, you'll hit one of them potholes and you might lose the front end on a car or a truck or whatever. But I appreciate your time and thank you again for coming down. And I really want to thank Representative Baker for contacting me and letting me come and speak my piece.
Thank you very much for
So-
being here. Appreciate it, Mr. Collins.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, further comments? Good morning.
Morning, my name is Gene Legursky. I'm the Director of Public Works for Sweetwater County. I apologize for my attire. I was out setting traffic control devices earlier this morning, so came to this meeting. I appreciate you guys coming down to Sweetwater County and entertaining this. This is an important subject that's been going on for a long time. Access on that road, we do not do any maintenance on the road. We do not have legal right to do maintenance on the road. When you talk about the different landowners, Rock Springs Grazing, BLM, there isn't appropriate easements on that road anymore. US 30, old US 30 used to go through there. Some of those easements have been forgiven back to the landowners. And so as a municipality, City of Rock Springs, City of Green River, we can't legally do anything on that road. I appreciate you guys looking at other alternatives, you know, third lanes, bypass lanes, stuff like that. I took over this job about 6.5 years ago. I traveled that road. I live in Rock Springs, travel that road several times. I think my record 6 times in one day, going back and forth between Rock Springs and Green River for different problems that we have all over the county. One of the things about that is the state said that they are in preservation mode. And you heard Commissioner Shanefield said that the county is. One thing about the county that I'm proud of and my predecessor is proud of is we have, through attrition, gotten rid of 13 positions in Road and Bridge. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, but we went from 34 employees to 21 employees. Saved the county about $1.1 million just in payroll a year. That's been able to go out on other roads. As you know, Sweetwater County is a large county. I have 1,200 miles of county road within Sweetwater County. Some of my guys, it takes an hour and a half just to get to their jobs every day. Out in Wamsutter, north in Wamsutter. When you guys head back to Casper, some of you guys are from Casper, Bear Oil is in Sweetwater County. That road has to be maintained all the way up there. We currently have 6 snowplows. The 6 snowplows have to do the bus route down to McKinnon, which is for all intents and purposes in Utah. We help the state out because we understand that the interstate is the most important thing because of heavy truck traffic. We actually plow 530 all the way down in McKinnon Junction. The mines help us out because they have snowplows, but we also have to help the mines out. So we actually do the bypass roads for the state when we're going down there. And the reason we do that is there's nothing more infuriating than seeing a plow with its plow up going down a road that's snowpacked. So our guys just go ahead and plow the roads on their way out to where they actually plow. North of Rock Springs is a huge area. There's about 2,600 residents that live out there that have to get into town. We have about 35 miles of road, residential road that need to be plowed so everybody can get in. With this bypass road, everybody keeps talking about county, state, stuff like that. There needs to be a partnership. There is no way that the county can take this on itself. If you actually look at the value that was proposed in 2012, I believe was right at $50 million. That's about $82 million currently or more, you know, and that's not even in the STIP that's 6 years out, you know, to get this on. So that's just, we're adding cost. I don't want to belabor the point of cost. This needs to be looked at, but I don't think that right now with the feasibility of access right away, and also when you guys go out there, please drive the whole road when you have time. Topographically, it is a very challenging road, and when you have to bring something up to current standards, speed standards, sight distance standards and everything like that, that road US 30 was not meant to handle this volume of traffic. So thank you.
Mr. Ligursky, thank you. Let's go to Senator Anderson and then back to the co-chairman.
Mr. Chairman, one question. If the legal issues were cleared up, so you had an easement through there, through the two property owners, would the county take it over and patch it up? Not necessarily bring it up to standard like you say, but patch it up so people could pass?
I can't say that for sure. That'd be a question for the commissioners, but we do get fuel tax money to go for a road like that, but it'd have to be adopted as a county road. And then if it's adopted as a county road, there would be other standards. And as you can remember, if it's adopted as a county road back in 2011, a county road, unless a speed study's done, has to be able to withstand 55-mile-an-hour traffic. Right now, that road cannot be. It has to be upgraded to be able to do 55 miles. There's blind corners, there's steep corners. There's also a quarter-mile section that's one lane that is right next to the interstate. So that would be a challenging thing for the county to take over. But if the commissioners told us, yeah, you have it, let's do it, we would do it.
Okay, Mr. Co-Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Ligursky, so just so I'm clear, who owns this road?
Nobody. No, not completely. You have right away through the whole thing? I don't believe so.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't know.
we'll get
It's on
YDOT
us.
to come back
Yeah.
up. And that, so, okay, to your knowledge, though, the road's pretty much abandoned.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
thank
and
you.
especially through the two private landowners that are on the north and the south, or on the east and the west side.
Okay, thank you.
So Mr. Ligursky, thank you. That's very enlightening. And the challenges faced by Sweetwater County, Natrona County, where I live, they're pretty immense. And I think you're aware the committee is actually taking up the whole issue of all of this county road system out there because it's a big one. And so appreciate you reminding us of the challenges that you face over here. So we're going to stay on it and hopefully we can find some things that might help. But regarding this road, thanks for coming forward.
Thank you for giving me time.
All
Thank you.
right. Further public comment? Good morning. Please state your name and speak into the microphone for us so we can hear you.
I'm Sheridan Norberg, Norberg's Towing from Green River. I'd like to see something done to improve our accesses across between Green River and Rock Springs. We get into situations where we've got to get our trucks across. And that highway is blocked 3 to 4 lanes wide regularly. Probably 5 years ago, the Highway Patrol put both Green River and Rock Springs towing rotations together on one list. So the Rock Springs tow trucks have to get to Green River. And that gets awkward both ways. We just recently had to come through and go through that bridge job at the 97 with a unit that was 16 feet wide. We was not popular that day trying to squeeze through. You have issues of the truck drivers. They'll get onto the old highway. They'll go up onto White Mountain because GPS call them accessible roads in the wintertime. It's just, it'll show I-80 blocked and those roads are open. It's, we have to get through like the ambulances, and fire trucks do. Many times we get cut off. They'll block us off. They'll see us coming. They'll put a vehicle right across the front of us with 10 feet space. We've never hit anybody, but I don't know how we missed. This plan that Representative Baker brought, I was on both Green River Main Street and Green River Urban Renewal when that was come up. That was funded by those two groups. So it's been a while since I've read it. There's a lot of information in there. It really needs looked at. That's all.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate you being here. Any questions? Committee. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for coming forward. Further comments on I-80? Morning, Senator.
Morning, Chairman Landon. John Culp, Sweetwater County, Senate District 12. Morning, Senator, Chairman Landon, and members of the Transportation Committee. I'll just say I wasn't planning on testifying, but I guess I feel compelled because of my background, what I've done in the past in the county. And just to say, I was a Sweetwater County Commissioner from 2010 to 18. We commissioned the study in 2012 to look at this alternate route. And it was $50,000 per entity that contributed to this. We did aerial surveys, and I don't know about the past, the 08 study, but I do know about the 12 study. And at the end of that study, it was found that first off, it was maintenance cost prohibitive. Even if you put the road in, to maintain it was difficult because of the aforementioned reasons. Weather on 80 will be the same as on the alternate route. It's a 2-lane road, which basically pins everybody into a situation where you can't get to them for safety. There's just no way getting in there. And the topography over there is just horrendous. And so for all those reasons, nobody wanted to maintain the road. And it was decided by the Board of County Commissioners that it was not going to be supported. Gives you a brief background on at least what I'm aware of. And there's also a main transmission line between from the Joint Powers Water Board that brings water from Green River to Rock Springs that flows through there. I believe there was 3 crossings involved where you have to sleeve the high pressure transmission line. You just can't run over it. So there's a lot of other things here. I mean, I won't belabor it, but there was a lot of reasons why it was deemed, just a problem that we couldn't really address. Didn't want to throw the money at it, I suppose, at the end of the day. Now, the community, this is the reason why I'm really up here speaking. The community is connected, and not like, other parts in the state of Wyoming. I think every community in Wyoming is different, but there's a uniqueness between Rock Springs and Green River to try to have the committee understand. There's a lot of services that aren't available in Green River, just bedroom community. I don't know, there's a lot of ways of saying this, but they don't have the same services as we have here. Most other communities in the state of Wyoming have similar services offered. They're smaller, but they have similar services. We're co-connected. We've been this way. Rivals is spoken of in the past, but we're interconnected. So the connection between the communities is vital for the people that live mostly in Green River to come into Rock Springs. It's a symbiotic relationship. A lot of folks work in the trona plants out in Green River and so on. So we are a different type of community than most communities in the state of Wyoming are that live this close together. And I-80 intrastate and interstate travel, I think, is key here. I'll touch on the fact that keeping I-80 open is critical. It's critical on many, many reasons. I personally am a proponent of a 3rd lane, if you want to call it that, another lane within the corridor of I-80. I think that makes the most sense to me. Now, none of these solutions are perfect. Of course, you've heard, people that don't want to drive fast and all sorts of, everyone has a different opinion. I'll say from my perspective and my experience, I'm a person that believes the best route to success here to improve the situation would be a center lane and down I-80. Now, would that be some sort of partnership for cost sharing? I don't know. But I really do believe something needs to be done about this. It is a problem for the communities. It's a problem because of the amount of traffic that runs on I-80. I mean, there's a huge amount. Like I said, it isn't what it was back in 08. So everything has kind of gotten escalated, cost included. So the STIP being taken up by YDOT, I'm disappointed that it wasn't more thought put into it. I realize their constraints is money, right? Like everything. But if there's some sort of mechanism that we could work on to get a project going, I mean, it's going to take time. That would be, I think, a positive step forward to help the community. And I also do listen. I'm the state Senate liaison to YDOT, so I get a chance to listen to many things in there. And I guess I'll stand for questions. but I like to end on this fact. I heard the only reason why you were down in our community was to talk about this alternate road. And co-chairman Burkhart, Landon, I know you realize this is a beautiful community and it has lots to offer. And I really do appreciate this committee coming down here to Southwest Wyoming to have a conversation about the needs locally. I mean, that's really a primary reason I came here to say thank you to the committee for being here and listening to our folks and our residents. And I'll stand for questions.
Senator, we're glad to be here. And as a Pinedale guy growing up, it's good to be back on the Western Front. So that might have played a little role in us coming back over here. It's good to be here and good to hear from you. Committee, any questions of the senator? So it sounds like maybe I appreciate knowing that the maintenance concern on the secondary road would be real. It also sounds like maybe we could have a conversation about some partnerships to figure out a way to make this happen. Did I read you correctly on that, Senator, on those 2 points?
Yes, Chairman.
Yeah. Mr. Co-Chairman, did you have something?
Just a comment for the good senator. At a point in my career, I came through here twice a week, almost every week, and I spent a lot of money in Rock Springs buying stuff that I can't find in Rollins. So I've put a lot of money into the community also.
Thank you, Co-Chair.
Senator, thanks for being here.
And I throw it out there. Everyone's welcome to come over to my house if you'd like. We could have a beverage. Live here in Rock Springs. If you find the time, I'd welcome anyone who wishes to come over. And thank you for listening.
Great to see you. Thanks, John. Further comment on I-80 this morning? Further comment? Okay, we're Representative Baker. You're the guy that's going to bring us home on this.
And I do appreciate the conversation. I think it's been a great starting point and a great place for us to blast off. I just want to touch on just a couple of things. One, this project is not in the STIP because of lack of trying. I've proposed and brought the idea to the local district a couple times. It hasn't risen to that level. I appreciate that. But again, just stepping back to the last session, there were 2 roads that were funded that weren't in the STIP that were in the budget. So the STIP is a process, but it's not necessarily the process that dictates all moving forwards. And what I want to do is just remind you of those that were in the legislature when we had the Bitter Creek discussion. The Bitter Creek discussion, initially, I was trying to attach money from AML and DEQ, and that wasn't the final result of what ended up happening. What ended up happening was the SLIB board ended up funding the first portion of that project and moved it forward with the support of the governor. This issue may be something very similar. I've spoken with the governor a number of times about this issue. Most recently, he expressed a lean towards support. So I think there is a move and a shift. I think, as the conversation continues to move forward, I think it will rise to that level. And just again, too, I think that there is a great opportunity for partnership, and I do think that there are options available and exploring. And I want to appreciate, just express my appreciation for everybody coming and listening, because I do think it's a great issue, and you obviously know my passion. So thank you,
Representative. Well done. Okay, the co-chairman's got a question. We're going to keep going.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, a question for the director. He's here, and for Representative Baker also. Back to my question, who owns this road? Do we know definitively? I'm just curious. We've talked a lot about the road and what could be done with it, but I'm curious as to who actually owns it.
Yeah, so Mr. Chairman, I'll let the director speak too, but initially we've had this discussion and the director actually put out a request within the department. I'll let him speak on the results, but my understanding is currently there's a 50-foot right of way. For a state highway, you need 200 feet in the right of way. And I think YDOT owns it, but we'll see.
Mr. Chairman, really the shorter answer is after Representative Baker's correct. He asked us the question. We went and did the research. We still have good easement of some sort for the entire length. And so that does present options.
Okay, I think we're fin. Representative Overmiller.
Thank you, Mr.
Keep going
Chairman.
here.
Director, so it's your easement, but the county would be precluded from that same easement?
Mr. Chairman, and Representative Overmiller, at this point, my understanding is it's our easement. Which if, I don't think we've ever talked to the county about, hey, would you like to maintain that road? So, I did take down that note and to see if there's some future options.
Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just add quickly, as Senator Kolb discussed, there are utilities. It wouldn't just be a simple upgrade of this, let's throw down some gravel and blade it. If traffic were to be diverted and use that road, there would need to be some additional upgrades, but thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that reminder. Okay, thanks, gentlemen. We're going to close public comment on I-80 and take a 10-minute break. And then we'll come back to the troopers issue. We've got some important work to do there and probably have to bump towing beyond the lunch hour, but we will finish up troopers before the morning is over. So, all right, 10 minutes. started. We appreciate it, Director and Colonel Taylor. Thank you for being here. We're gonna take up the important issue of troopers and dispatchers compensation for my understanding, Heather, is that we do have Director Bach willing to weigh in this morning to testify, so we'll have her on standby. I appreciate her carving out a little bit of time for us this morning. But to kind of present the issue and get us started, Director, I'll turn it over to you. And then on to the Colonel, hopefully. Thanks, Representative.
I think we've lost the batteries in one of these. Oh, no, not just. Yeah, what does it mean when it's blinking? Okay, so just to get started, Mr. Chairman, so on this on this key topic, thank you for including it. I tell you, we continue to see shortages in both of these areas and have been working the compensation hard. As we said, thank you for the pay raise. Mr. Rossetti actually has some specific numbers that he can work us through. The dispatchers, both dispatchers and troopers received a nice raise. I'm not sure at this point it's enough to aggressively recruit. And I know there's been discussions of potentially, phase 2. And so from my standpoint as a director would certainly support that. But Mr. Chairman, maybe just to talk some specifics, I'll kick it over to Mr. Rossetti, and then we can see what Colonel Ratliff might add.
Okay, thank you, Director. Go ahead. Mr. Rossetti.
Mr. Chairman, Taylor Rossetti, Support Services Administrator. What we handed out to you guys there is really kind of a summary of the plan that was approved during the last legislative session and directly how that impacted the troopers and the dispatchers. Feel free to ask any questions as we go through this. I just tried to keep this pretty high level and just kind of the facts of what that plan did. So on the first page there, just so that everybody kind of has an understanding of what was approved and kind of how that was implemented. And certainly Aaron or Tricia can jump in on this if they need to. But one of the first things we did was we moved from the 2017 pay tables to the 2020 pay tables. So that was huge. Then the next step was really to make sure that everybody was at least at the current minimum salary for the 2020 pay table. So that was the first movement that was done after the legislative approval. Then next was the merit market matrix, and it's reproduced here on that page, and it's pretty small, but in the last page you actually have a bigger version of that, and it kind of explains how then the adjustments were made, and it's merit and market because you got a bigger raise if you have better performance and you're farther from market. So that's really kind of what's going on. If you look at that matrix as it sits there on that table, performance, this performance score from the performance evaluation that's required for employees gets higher as that table goes from the bottom to the top, and the pay for an individual is higher when you go from left to right. So the market is really right there between columns 4 and columns 5. So that's basically market, or what you guys commonly hear is MPP. So that's kind of where that is. So an individual that had a commendable rating who was at the entry, so you'd be on line 8, column 7. And where those two intersect, that was about the adjustment that individual would receive once they were moved to at least the new minimum. So they would receive about a 7.5% raise. So that's kind of how that matrix works for you. Beyond that, going on to the bottom of that page there, that is just a box that shows kind of what happened completely department wide. The average raise was about $415 or about 8.19% for YDOT. Every department was different, but this is specific for YDOT. Specific to the topic at hand, if you move over to that next page, there's 2 tables that summarize the patrol. And these positions are arranged from the trooper 1, which is our entry level, down to the lieutenant colonel. And this just shows you basically, once this pay plan was implemented, how that impacted our folks. As the director mentioned, these were good raises. Again, thank you. We've heard very positive things from our employees. You can notice that one of the biggest raises was given to those trooper ones. And I think what that speaks to is that entry-level pay was certainly a hindrance. There was also a significant move in that market. There was about a 13% market change between 17 and 20. So we were obviously behind. This helped get some of that caught up, and I still think that there is probably some work to do. I won't go through any of this in great detail, but I can certainly answer some questions. So as you go through that, it shows you the average salary that you guys saw during the legislative session. That comes straight from those compensation facts that HRD and ANI gave you guys. Shows you the average salary after the raises were implemented, the increases, and then what the percent adjustment was. So that's that top table. The bottom table, I think, is one of the things too that you hear about a lot, and that's your compa ratio. And really what that is it's your current salary divided by what the market pay is, and it comes out as a ratio and into a percentage. So if you look at that table, it's structured the same way. It's structured from trooper one to the lieutenant colonel. If you look at where you were on the left-hand side, that was what the compa ratio was in the fact book you guys had during last session. So for a trooper one on the 2017 pay table, they were at about 82.6% of market. After the adjustment, so the move to the 2020 pay table, the move to the new minimum, and then the actual market merit matrix was implemented, they moved up to 85% of market. So again, they're still lagging about 15% behind what the market rate is established for that. And that is the 2020 market pay rate. So it just kind of shows you where we're at. So that table is the same way for the patrol. It's very similar as you turn to that next page for your dispatchers. As the director mentioned, we are struggling to bring people into the dispatch realm. That is a very high stress, high burnout occupation anyway. But if you look at what that average wage is, that's probably between $17 and $18 an hour. A wage like that can be made in an awful lot of places, as you guys know, working around the communities. So with that, I'd certainly stand for any questions you guys may have about this specific information.
So Mr. Rossetti, I've got a quick question. When you talk about market, can we assume that would include surrounding states? In other words, I think our curiosity is always contiguous states and what are they doing and how do we measure up? If we use that market analysis that you just gave us, does that suffice for the surrounding states?
Mr. Chairman, if Aaron or Tricia's on, I would like to phone a friend on that, just because ANI and HRD is actually the ones who implement and create those markets for us.
Okay, all right. We'll get to Director Bach here in a moment. Colonel, do you have any thoughts on that, or should we go to Tricia on that?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, one question. Do you have to start everybody at Trooper one, or if they have experience with the sheriff's office or city or something like that, can you start them as Trooper 3 or Sergeant or something?
Mr. Chairman and Senator Anderson, that's a great question. And certainly an area where we're focusing, as we know we're competitive in the higher ranges. So yeah, if they're qualified, no matter where they come from, whether it's in-state or out, and can be certified through post as a professional peace officer, and have those required certifications and time in place experience, we'll bring them in at a higher pay rate and rank.
Thank you, gentlemen. So Heather, I think you have Director Bach on there. It's hard to see her this morning. She's silhouetted a little bit, but Director Bach, can you hear us and are you on board?
Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Erin Williams. I'm the Human Resources Division Administrator. Director Bach has asked that I pass along her sincere apology. She is unable to make it today. Unfortunately, she is home very sick. So Jared Hansen, our HR manager, and myself are available today to answer any questions you may have of Director Bach.
Well, thank you. And my apologies. We literally cannot see you on the screen. You are completely silhouetted, and so I apologize for misidentifying you.
That's okay. I have
do
a
you have a
window, a
sense
big
of-
window right behind me, so I apologize.
Well, that's all right. Listen, we did have that question that I just posed, which is, do we know when we say market value, if we're trying to get our troopers up to market, does that pretty much cover the contiguous states? What can you tell us about that?
It does. Included in our market survey data, Chairman Landon, we have 12 states that we look at that have been approved by the Compensation Commission. It's in the statewide compensation philosophy. It includes the six states that are closest to the state of Wyoming and surround Wyoming, and 6 additional states that were approved by the commission to include market data as well.
Okay, thank you. Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand that the COMPA number includes other states, but do we have an idea of where this puts us at in relation to other counties? Because I know that the previous discussion is that we're losing troopers and maintainers to the county. Where does this put us in relation to the other counties? Thank you.
Aaron, are you still there?
I am still here. You know, we have quite a bit of problems getting the actual market data from some of the counties here in Wyoming. We do survey, and Jared Hansen is on the phone. He probably has a little more information detailed down to what we're able to get. We do include in our survey data public and private sector data. And so, Jared, if you might have a little more information on the counties, I do know in the past we've had to kind of rely on WYDOT and going out and surveying on our own because they aren't included in a lot of our survey data or don't, participate or like to share just for competitive reasons. We do include the Mountain States Employers Council survey data. It's out of the state of Colorado, and it surveys Front Range market data. And there is county data included in that. I just don't have a breakdown of what specific counties respond to that.
Let's go to the Colonel. Any thoughts to help answer Representative Baker's question, Colonel?
Mr. Chairman, we are losing folks to counties and other municipalities. Sometimes it's a little bit of a moving target because they're adjusting as they go as well, right? It's happening. I don't think it's quite as much as it used to. I'll echo what's been said about thanking this body for this raise. This is certainly helping, and you can certainly see the higher percentage is with our entry level troopers and our entry level dispatchers, and that's where it needs to be. I mean that's where we're having trouble recruiting, and certainly appreciate that. But we're losing folks to other agencies. It's not germane to law enforcement. I think we're all seeing it in our own backyards, in our own industries. We're seeing it in grocery stores and restaurants and everywhere. But we are struggling with our manpower.
Taylor, did you have any additional comments? Okay, thank you.
No, sir.
I think we're always going to have to be aware that some of those other law enforcement agencies are going to be in the mix, and sometimes I'm sure it's a quality of life issue, staying closer to home, that kind of thing. Director, anything else on the trooper issue that you'd like to share with us before we move on?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not so much on the troopers. I think it's always important to say, you know, there's 2,000 men and women in YDOT, and the pay issue affects them all. And so appreciate the focus on this one niche, but it's certainly, it's across the board. And we take, I take a one YDOT approach to the pay issue.
So Director, my knee-jerk reaction to this morning is if we still aren't there, and I think we took a huge step that I was really pleased the legislature stepped up on that. I think it was important. If we're not there, hopefully the Transportation Committee would have an opportunity to find out if we aren't. And if you're saying we're not, we should advocate. So, Mr. Co-Chairman, you might have some thoughts in that regard, and you've talked about on-call pay and some things. You have a question or any thoughts on that? That could be included in a letter to our appropriations colleagues or whatever. So,
Well, I think it's dead. Okay, so thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we've had this discussion before with the on-call pay. And Aaron, this question and issue is also for you. The last meeting we discussed that this is set not by statute, but by rule. Has anything been done to change the rules on-call pay? And I'll just be blunt about it. If there hasn't been, I will probably bring legislation on this, because I think it's insulting to tell an officer, give up your evenings, your life, your Saturdays for $1 an hour, or any state employee. And like I've said before, if I have to solve a problem for you, you probably won't like the decision. So anything more on the on-call pay, any changes in that area, any suggestions, any thoughts?
Chairman
Aaron,
Landon,
go ahead.
Chairman Landon, members of the committee, we are working diligently. We've had numerous meetings with YDOT staff, Taylor and Director Reiner. Very good conversations discussing moving expenses, on-call pay, some strategies statewide that we do really need to implement with the issues we're having with recruiting and retention. We are currently in the process of working on 2 other statewide policies since HR consolidation. Those are wrapping up. The next policy that we're going to tackle is the statewide compensation policy and the rules that govern that. These are definitely on the forefront of the topics of conversation to look into. Jared Hansen and his team, we receive a pay practices survey from the National Comp Association that we belong to. So it's all of the state HR's equivalent, our counterparts, and we look into what they're paying for on call and what their policies are, and see as a state what we need to be doing differently. So Jared and his team are looking into that to see, what $1 an hour they are paying on the on-call pay. And so, yes, we are actively looking into that as we speak. And as far as the Taylor did an excellent job kind of presenting that we did make a lot of headway. Would like to thank you all for your support on the compensation, but we have a long ways to go. As you can see, just with the trooper data, 82% of compa ratio to the 2017. We made it to 85% for the troopers of the 2020 data, but we are going to be looking at 2022. And so, any support we can get for moving forward is much appreciated. I think we've done some good things for state employees, but we have a long ways to go to where we're paying that competitive wage. And so we continue to work on a request and an ask for phase 2. We present compensation issues and where we are and where we would like to be September 12th to the JAC.
So Aaron, thank you for that. We would really appreciate updates if you would make a little note to let the Transportation Committee know where we land on some of this. And that leads to a follow-up question, maybe for the Colonel. Colonel, do we do any regional cost adjustment for troopers that serve in high density or difficult areas like I-80?
Mr. Chairman, we do not. The only kind of compensation that is allowed them that might be over and above what everyone else receives would be, like the folks living in Teton County, and that additional pay adjustment.
I wonder if that's not something that might be considered. At least the testimony that I've heard from all of you, sometimes it's really difficult to find officers who want to serve along this I-80 corridor, for example. But it sounds like Erin and her group maybe are going to tackle several issues. That could be something that, if you feel like that would be helpful, we ought to throw it out there.
Mr. Chairman, I think we'd be open to that conversation for sure.
Mr. Co-Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a microphone that works now.
Good deal.
So, Ms. Williams, a question for you. How long will these studies take? I guess I don't see why we have to study an issue that we already know is a problem.
Chairman Landon, yes, I'm still here. Chairman Landon, members of the committee, it shouldn't take us too long to actually study what other states are doing and look into that. We have the data. We'll be receiving in October the data for the new pay practices survey. It does take a while to move through the rulemaking, the official rulemaking process and the policy process. So that's going to take us some time to actually get through that official rulemaking process. Just because that's the procedures that we have to go to. That's the most time consuming part. The studying piece, we already have that information available to us.
Okay, so follow up to that, then you will have for this committee at our first week of November meeting, a recommendation of what that on-call pay should be. Am I correct?
Correct. We can do that.
Okay. Because I'll just lay it right out there out front. If you do not, my bill will say it's no less than 1/3 of the equivalent hourly pay. So just, you can use that as a baseline, but this issue needs to be resolved. I think it's an insult to state employees and especially our troopers to say you get $1 an hour, you can't leave home, you can't go do anything, you can't have fun with your family. And you're going to get paid $1 an hour for that, to sit around and wait. I know I'm kind of passionate about this and that, but I think we need to do as a state what's right for our state employees. They put their lives on the line for us. We need to at least cover them adequately. So thank you. I'm done.
I wish the co-chairman would let us know what's on his mind. Ms. Williams, if you would take a look at the other states and see if they any of them have implemented a regional cost adjustment. I'm glad that we are able to assist in the Jackson area. We, of course, do that with teachers and others. But I'm just curious about that one too, Ms. Williams. And by the way, thank you very much for standing in for the director and being here today to help us out a little bit.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Director Reiner.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I was just going to, while Ms. Williams is still on, thank her. She and her team, like she said, Taylor and I do meet with their team once a month, and we are working a litany of issues. And I would just share in this forum that they have been easy to work with and receptive. There's lots of things to work through, and it has taken some time. So my thanks to them for that. We've had, they did help us with some dispatcher pay, shift differential. We were able to work through some issues there. So there's been some good news story there. I do think, I do appreciate your willingness to help carry the water for state employees, because as has been mentioned by everybody, we do certainly think there's more work to be done in this general area of compensation for all state employees.
Well, I think, Director, that hits on a very important point, which is we've gained some ground. And Ms. Williams said this too. We've gained some ground, but we're not there yet. And I think that's the mentality that we've got to stay with. So Representative Stibar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question I have is all whiteout employees, have they all, your maintenance workers, they all received the wage? Because I stopped somewhere the other day crossing 80 and was talking to a whiteout guy, said he didn't get a raise this year.
Mr. Rossetti.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Stivar, everyone received at least 3% according to the merit market matrix, as you see there. There were individuals that were promoted between April 2nd and June 30th, which was kind of the cutoff to do the final numbers here. So as they were promoted, we tried to put them where we expected the other people in the promoted class to end up. So they did not receive then an additional raise in July. So there were some instances where that occurred. The only other group of individuals that did not receive raises were people that had unsatisfactory performance ratings.
Okay,
Follow up?
follow-ups, Representative, go
Follow-up.
ahead.
How do I want to put this? This, let's call it an NCOER or a value, a report. Do you think that's a good way to give somebody a raise on these evaluations?
Anything on the merit pay issue, I think is what the representative was asking about.
Sure, Mr. Chairman and Representative Stivar. I don't know that I have a opinion on the matter. It's actually a policy decision that's made really by HRD and you guys as the legislature.
Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, how many troopers and dispatchers are we short right now?
Colonel?
Mr. Chairman, and Representative or Senator Anderson, I just off the top of my head, I think we're short somewhere in the neighborhood of 44 troopers and correct me if I'm wrong, Taylor, 20 or so dispatchers. We're almost or are right at 50% of our dispatch allocation.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just add, so those numbers are alarming to me, just in terms of us having the capability to perform our mission. And we certainly get there overnight, right? I mean, it's been attrition over the years. The compensation increase helped, but like we said, more work to do, and it's going to take some time to fix it. Maintainers are the other area. I think we're about, I want to say between 60 and 70 down. And so when it just gets to pushing snow, this coming winter, we're going to ask our current employees to do a lot. And we are looking for innovative ways, like we discussed before, to push it. So it's out there and is worthy of a discussion.
So Director, just for the reminder to the committee and others, this issue is actually bigger than the highway patrol, isn't it? We've got people who don't want to go into law enforcement these days. And so it kind of becomes an issue of, are you willing to step up and compensate people enough to make them want to be a trooper or be a law enforcement officer? Isn't it, Colonel, any thoughts about it? That, I hope I characterized that correctly. I think we're short in the law enforcement academy, aren't we? We're not graduating as many as we used to.
Mr. Chairman, that's true. And I think it's a complex problem. You have jobs that are coming open that people are incentivizing that some of our folks are looking at saying, geez, there's a national disdain for law enforcement. That looks attractive, or that is maybe something that I've always wanted to do. We have a lot of that. The compensation is certainly a part of it. But we're hearing that our folks are super appreciative of that, full well knowing that there's more work that needs to be done there. But it's geez, I'm sick of being a cop and I want to do something else. We're hearing that as well.
Colonel, whether we like it or not, I've talked to a couple of officers in my community, and this national disdain, if you will, for law enforcement, it's a factor. It's a factor for them. So
absolutely.
And I know it affects a couple of other sectors too, like teachers. Any final thoughts, gentlemen? We're going to move on unless there's anything from the committee. Anything? Okay, we're gonna wrap this up and we're gonna take that lunch break. And hope everybody can go on the tour and get a look at what we've been talking about this morning.
Mr. Chairman,
Real quickly, let me just throw out an invite. We've got to go to public comment on this trooper issue, you guys. I'm sorry, Heather. But I would issue an invitation if Ms. Jones and Senator Kolb, if you guys would like to, you're sure welcome to join us on the trip over and back. Wouldn't hold you to it. I appreciate you guys being here at all. So thanks. You're sure welcome to join us.
Mr. Chairman.
Heather, you,
So-
Representative Baker.
Yeah, so Stephanie with the local YDOT office, she's gonna be directing everyone to the van. There's plenty of room. They have a 15-person van and also another vehicle for YDOT. So everyone can come along that wants to. Again, it'll be about 20 minutes out there. We'll be out there for about 20 minutes. We'll have lunch and then
We're
20
not
minutes.
leaving yet, gentlemen. Everybody, I do want to go to public comment before we leave this this trooper issue. So do we have any public comment online? None. Anybody in the room like to provide any public comment on dispatchers and troopers and law enforcement in general? Okay, we'll close public comment. Now we will proceed. Thank you, Representative Baker. All right, results it.
Colonel?
Oh, Heather, you had something for us? I'm sorry. we
Mr.
good?
Chairman, the only thing I had was a request of whether you were doing public comment.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for holding my feet to the fire. Okay, we're adjourned till about 1:30, it says. So we'll try to be back here by 1:30.